Vartanian.
Here.
Thank you. All present.
Item 2 is report regarding posting of the agenda. The agenda for this meeting was posted on or before Monday, October 14th, 2019, on the bulletin board outside of City Hall. And item 3 is approval of minutes of September 19th, 2019 meeting. If anybody has any comments or changes. Otherwise,
Yeah, I have a question for clarification. Jay, could you revise on the informational briefings where it's talking, where it's talking about 1753 Hillcrest?
Yeah,
Was the old metal structure, the carport actually removed?
not yet.
Right, so I think that needs to be corrected in the minutes. It says he did remove the old
Oh,
metal
okay.
structure.
Going.
That was the only correction.
Unfortunately, I haven't reviewed these minutes. So.
That was the only correction I had.
Okay, I'll remove that part.
Good. Now, we'll get an update tonight on that. So.
Okay, move to approve the minutes.
Second?
Thank you. Commissioner Carignati?
Yes.
Commissioner Morgan?
Yes.
Commissioner Shire?
Yes.
Madam Chair Vartanian?
Yes, thank you. Okay, item number 4 is oral communications. And we don't have any cards. So we'll move on to item number 5, which is comments from commissioners. Any comments?
I do,
I'm looking at you.
as always.
As always, we're
Let's see
prepared.
which one I'm looking at.
Movies.
Oh, movies. Oh, yes. Okay. So, the Historical Society of the Crescenta Valley, which will be meeting on Monday, October 21st at 7 p.m. at the La Crescenta Center for Spiritual Living, which is at the intersection of Dunsmore and Santa Carlotta, is happy to have the history of early cinema in Los Angeles. It's a general history of cinema from 1878 through the first decades of the 19th century. The early growth of cinema in Los Angeles and finally the crucial role that Los Feliz area played, including the movie studios that established themselves in Los Feliz in the silent film era. So when you go to Hollywood, you'll see the fact that Paramount's there, Columbia used to be there, quite a few other studios were there, and the person that is going to be presenting it, his name is Donald Seligman. He used to be the president of the Los Feliz Improvement Association, which is their homeowners group, which has been around since 1916. He's a local amateur historian whose family first arrived in Los Angeles more than 100 years ago, and he's the author of an incredibly great book, if you're into silent films, called Los Feliz in the Silent Film Era, The Heart of Los Angeles, Cinema 1908 to 1930. He gives tours, walking tours of the area, and he's well-versed, and he's very articulate, and we're very pleased to have him. So that's next Monday, October 21st at 7 p.m. And moving onward, next.
Oh,
Thank you.
I'm lost.
Okay, the Glendale Public Library and the Seaver History Center down at the Natural History Museum are pleased to present the La Crescenta Valley New Year's Flood of 1934, life during the Great Depression in Southern California. We would like you to join local artist and author Daryl Holter for the premiere screening of his video commemorating the La Crescenta Valley's New Year's Flood of 1933/34. The Los Angeles New Year's Flood in song and video. So I didn't know that you could actually sing about a flood, but I guess we're going to be doing that.
You haven't heard the Woody Guthrie?
I have, and that's what the next line is. This video features Daryl singing Woody Guthrie's Los Angeles New Year's Flood and includes archival images provided by the Natural History Museum Seaver Center for Western History Research. Images of the flood from the library's Glendale History Room will shed light on the history of the flood and its impact on local residents and communities. Holter will also share additional Woody Guthrie songs and stories from Guthrie's time living in Los Angeles. So it will be at the Glendale Public Library on, thank you, Saturday, October 26th at 2 p.m. And they're also going to have a drawing which will be held with gift baskets courtesy of the Natural History Museum, the Seaver Center. Anyway, we'd like you all to come and see this again, Saturday, October 26th at 2 p.m. We thank you very much, and I'm done for the moment.
Count me in. I like great flood history. Thank you. Anybody else?
No.
Okay.
Well, while we have that open, I wanted to let all of our homeowners, property owners know that if you haven't filled out a speaker card, do we have pretty much everyone?
I think I have
Anyone who
one
wants to
for
speak, we need a speaker card to be filled out.
each of
There are
our,
also 3 strangers in the back row. I don't know what they're doing here. But they are USC students in the Heritage Conservation Program, fulfilling the requirements of a very important assignment that they all will do really well on because they're seeing this hearing. So I just want to say
Welcome.
hello.
well,
to them.
welcome.
Thank you for joining us.
You get to be here for a nice, long meeting.
I gave them an out after a while.
Okay, item number 6 is old business. 6A 1106 Ross Moyne Avenue, review of owner request to maintain existing stucco and delete the previously approved Mills Act condition. This will be continued to the HPC special meeting of December 5th, 2019.
And we should take a vote to continue that. I hope very much that this is the last continuation of this. So,
We hope.
So moved. Need a
I
motion?
second.
Commissioner Caragnado?
Yes.
Commissioner Shire?
Yes.
Commissioner Morgan?
Yes.
Madam Chair?
Yes,
Vartanian?
thank you. Okay, 7A, new business, 1527 Cedar Hill Road, Glendale Register number 33, Mills Act application, continued from hearing of September 19th, 2019. We'll turn to staff.
all right, this is a complicated case, an interesting case, and ultimately one that I, feel a little torn about in terms of the staff recommendation. This is a craftsman-style house that was built in 1912, I think, and it's called the Gregorian's House, and it's one of the early designations on the Glendale Register. So the first 37 properties that were on the register were places that were identified in the historic preservation element many years ago, and 37 of them were kind of moved onto the register all at once by council back in 1997. And we don't have a lot of information about a lot of these places, so some of them are obvious landmarks like City Hall, and some of them are places that we would today expect to have a lot more research done about, but the file is pretty empty in terms of the Gregorian's house. When it was designated, the owner at that time chose not to pursue the Mills Act, or when we established the Mills Act for the property tax reduction, the owner did not file an application. They chose not to pursue it, and in the meantime, the current owner has decided to try to get the Mills Act. So I went out for a site visit, and I found that the house has been significantly altered over the years, and it's not anything to do with the current owner. It was altered at the time that it was put on the register, and that's where it becomes a little more complicated. To my mind, in the way we look at properties and the way we look at alterations to properties today, I would say these alterations would even make it not eligible for the Glendale Register today. So it was hard for me to make a finding that it was eligible for the Mills Act because of that. The owner would obviously like to pursue the Mills Act and try to share his view of the situation. I have some photos just to kind of walk you through a few of the changes that were made to the property in case you weren't able to visit. You see here the 2-story volume on the left is the original 1912 part of the house, and then an addition was put on the right side. This 1-story addition coming forward was added in 1924. But multiple parts of the house have been altered over the years. The house was originally on a much larger piece of land, so it's very similar to several properties we've seen in the last few months where the property was subdivided. The original front of the house is what we're looking at to the left, and it originally had a Kenneth Road address. Now it's on now it has a Cedar Hill address. So the properties in front of the house were subdivided, other houses were built there. And at some point, and we don't really have a history for the changes, the front porch was enclosed, which under our current kind of methodology for surveying properties is kind of a real black mark for a craftsman to still maintain its integrity as a craftsman. So you can see that you can still read that it was kind of an open porch with the stucco columns. I'll try to highlight it with the mouse a little. There's stucco columns on each side, and then glass panels were inserted where what was once the open porch. We'll see a photo in a second that shows another alteration, but at the base of this porch, there's a sliding glass door at this location. This addition from 1924 is nicely designed in its own right, but it's somewhat awkwardly placed on the house. It's not, I think, where if an addition were being reviewed and approved to a Mills Act property or to a Glendale Register property, it's not the way it would have been done, especially with the chimney kind of rising up awkwardly in front of this projecting wing at the second floor, which I'm presuming is original, but that itself is kind of strange. So there's a lot of layers here that we don't necessarily have answers to.
Can I stop you for a minute?
Of course.
Right there? Sorry, what year did you say that, do we know when the front porch enclosure happened?
No, we don't.
And then you said there's a sliding
Yeah,
door?
that's in the next picture.
Oh, okay.
This is the porch level with the glass, and then this is the under porch area that looks like it was excavated a little bit to give basement access to the garden. So there's a sliding door was inserted in that opening. And this is the side view of the porch. So you can see how the porch was enclosed. The French doors were added. This obviously would have been open originally. The stairs and the balustrade leading up to it, I don't know what that dates to, but that could be part of the original construction. On the left side here, you see this is the 1924 addition. In the older part of the house, every single window has been replaced with a single light window of various operation types, fixed or casement. There are still some original features left. You know, it still has the look of a craftsman house. The shingle siding is still intact. I believe this would be the original front door, or it's certainly an early craftsman front door. And you can see a little bit. I wrote in the staff report that the windows were kind of an Art Nouveau style. And then after I wrote it, I was like, well, maybe a little bit. And then I looked at a picture of the Gamble house, and they're pretty much what the Gamble house looks like. So I almost have to wonder if it was someone riffing off of the Gamble house with this kind of little flip at the ends of the crossbar there.
But again, that's the 1924 part.
This is the, yeah, so the 1924 part has all of these original 1924 windows are intact with this mutton detail. At the other side of the house, so this is on the opposite side from the front porch, so this would be the original rear elevation. This patio cover was added. Not necessarily the worst thing, but it's attached to the facade. It's integrated into the design of the facade. It's not something that we would say today meets the standards or something that we would approve. And then the garage at the back is significantly altered also. Mr. Gregorian's will perhaps share. It has an interesting history itself in terms of how it was used as part of the house, but it certainly doesn't resemble what it was back in the day. I think that was all the photos I have. So, you know, you can see it's hard to look at a nice old house and say, oh, we don't think it's nice enough for the Mills Act. It's the first time this has come up that I can remember in a situation like this with a property that's already designated. The real outcome of this, if HPC and or council decides not to give the Mills Act, is Mr. Gregorian's may ultimately choose to try to withdraw this from the Glendale Register, which is a feasible, realistic outcome from this, but it's something that I think if it happens, it happens. It's something just we wouldn't designate a property like this in today's kind of the way we think about historic Glendale.
So is it easier to remove something that's just a registered property versus something that's under a Mills Act contract?
It's easy, yeah. It's very hard to remove a Mills Act
Right, because it's a
contract.
contract.
It's a process that we have to go through, and Mr. Gregorians would have to file a request to de-designate. We have the process is
There's a
laid out in
process.
the ordinance. So,
Okay.
So it's pretty clear. Since I've been here, we haven't done it, though. So
Do we know why it was put on the register? I mean, is there any paperwork at all? Because I looked all over and I couldn't find anything.
Yeah, there's, if you want, I can read you the brief description that we have, that when they were designating it.
Sure.
It was written, it said that the house, it is a very large home with exceptionally well-preserved features such as paneling, flooring, uniquely styled windows and doorways, fully restored basement and stairs, wide overhanging eaves, and exceptionally well-kept garden with several century-old trees. Architecturally, the house itself is historically significant. Socially, it reminds of the place in history which Glendale served as an area where prominent Los Angeles citizens established summer homes specifically designed for this climate. And that's pretty much what we've got. And it's an interesting point because we do have a wonderful catalog of these retirement and/or summer homes kind of along the foothills, and this would have fit into that back in the day.
So that was written by the original HPC, or was it written by the Glendale Historical Society? I mean, who wrote the?
I'm assuming it was written by a staff person here. It's not credited in the document. Mr. Gregorians will tell you about who he talked to at the time, but the designation, I believe, predates your ownership. Okay, yeah, so
No, the house is named after him.
that is true.
It's the only
Not
one. It's the only one I know.
Yeah.
So.
No, it's one of two.
Oh,
so.
okay.
Yeah, so Mr. Gregorians can talk about the process that he went through and who he talked to. He mentions that it was the Historical Society, I believe, and I'm not sure how that played out at the time.
So we don't have minutes from the original historical. I mean, it's funny if it came by the Historical Preservation Commission that there's a dearth of information on these first 37 homes.
I'd have to go back. I'm not 100%. I'm thinking if we had an HPC.
Yeah, I was going to say, is there an
I don't
HPC then?
I'd have to do more research on that. Based on, I have the file here, and it's a pretty slender file of material. We do have photos that were apparently taken at the time. The house was a different color, but in all other ways, it looks pretty much like it does today. And then the records of the designation, they basically just put a whole bunch of properties up at once, and there's a little blurb about each of them, and then they do say what criterion it was designated under. So
Yeah, you
here's,
said two different criteria, but I can only find one.
yeah, let me find the criteria for you. But, on these pages, we have 37 properties with a little blurb of a sentence each, which was how they got designated. So the Gregorians residence is designated as a historic resource because it identifies interest or value as part of the heritage of the city and exemplifies one of the best remaining architectural types of a neighborhood. Those are our old criteria that we don't use anymore, but they were in place for a long time until we changed them a few years ago.
Next question. So was this okayed by the original HPC, and did it go to City Council?
Yes.
And did they okay?
Yeah, this is a city council document.
We don't know if there was an
We don't know if there was
HPC.
HPC.
Yeah, I'm gonna.
Council designated it.
Staff, you had put it to council, probably.
Okay.
Yeah, actually, here I can answer the question. HPC was established in 1997. When we did all of that, there was a joint meeting of planning and HPC. The Planning Commission considered and recommended approval of the general plan amendment to revise and update the historic preservation element and the Glendale Register of Historic Resources. And so the Planning Commission voted 4-0 in favor. HPC at the same meeting also considered the general plan amendment and the Glendale Register of Historic Resources. Motion was made on each matter, and the vote by the commission was the same on each. Again, 4-0.
For the whole batch.
For the whole batch, right?
And then, Jay, when did we start offering Mills Act? Was it,
I think 2003.
okay.
Oh,
Correct me if I'm wrong.
what's that?
So did you say the present owner was the owner when it was put on the register in 97, and then
Yes.
presumably
I
in a-
mistakenly said the opposite, but yes.
Around 2003, the Mills Act was declined at that time.
No.
Well, I
Or
don't,
at some point.
why, that would be a question to ask the applicants.
Got it. We
We're
don't
getting
know
ahead of
that.
ourselves.
Okay. Any other questions for Jay?
Not right now.
Okay, so we'll open the public hearing, and I have a card from the owner, Ari Gregorians. Please feel free to come forward.
Sure.
Thank you.
I did present everyone with a folder of, and I'm sorry that I didn't give Mr. Platt a copy of it, but I just gave it to him today, of the history of our ownership of this property. A pleasant accident as I came in here today. I met the gentleman in the back, Mr. Hunt. And Mr. Hunt is the brother of the gentleman I acquired the house from in 1988.
Small world.
Anyway, since I basically, I started up with 3 volumes of books for you, and then it ended up in 3 pages, so I'm very efficient. I'm not going to go and
We
cover
appreciate
all
that.
this again, because you already have the information there. One thing I need to correct is I did not decline pursuing the Mills Act. We bought the property in 1988. In early 97, our broker, who had helped us to acquire the property, called me and said, there are historical society people or members who are interested to come and see the property because they didn't know of its existence. So I said, fine, by all means. They came over, they looked at the property, and they basically said that, we should have this, listed, and there are benefits, including a property tax rebate program or a reduction program. That followed with a letter from the, you have it there, I'm getting old slowly.
Mr. McKenna.
Mr. McKenna. Basically stressing that, not saying maybe, but saying that that is part and parcel of this setup together. Enough incentive for me to agree to it. But then once I signed this, a gentleman came, and I presume would have been a predecessor of Mr. Platt. He came to see me, and he said that the rebate program or the reduction program is called the Mills Act. And he gave me the information on that and also the contract. I can't swear that the contract was 100% the same as what Mr. Platt has given me. But it feels it was exactly the same. We're very harsh penalty. I don't know for what. We'll hang you if you don't do this or whatever. So anyway, but that wasn't the issue. I asked, how is this basically, how does it work? He said it's a rebate. So you would get up to 50% of the certain expenditure against your property tax. So for example, if my property tax was $10,000, I could claim certain allowable expenses up to $5,000. And I said, fine, let's go and see, what do you mean by allowable expenses? Maintenance, painting, gardening, blah, blah. I said, no, absolutely not. Then what is it? He said, re-roofing. I said, I've just done that. Rewiring. Mr. Hunt's brother did that. Replumbing. Mr. Hunt's brother did that before we purchased the house. In 1997, when he acquired it, it probably was a red tagged house or a business. So in the end, his thing was that, yeah. And I said, what happens if I re-roof this at some point and it costs me $15,000, and let's assume my property tax is still at $10,000. I'll get $5,000 rebate on that. What about the rest of it? Can I bank it? He said, absolutely not. So, and I looked at him like an idiot, and I said, what good is this to me? He says, well, for a long number of years, not good enough. I mean, it's not. And I said, is this a joke? How many people, I'm sorry, I'll be very honest with you. I said, how many idiots will sign this agreement with you guys? So no, I didn't decline. I declined because of the explanation given. I was seriously misled. And I put it to experience, and I forgot all about it until 3 or 4 months ago. I heard that, Mills Act wasn't what I was presented with. That is why I made this application, and I basically went and saw Mr. Platt. It's hard for me to imagine that a person who's working for the city, designated to do to deal with a very specific job, can misinform me or give me a lot of bull. So principally, I really have a serious problem with this, what's happened to us. I don't want to take up too much of your time, because Mrs. Vartanian just got that. And I'm sure she'll go through the 3 pages, 4 pages. And Mr. Platt has it as well. The property is what it is. We've tried to take care of it as best as we can. The porch, if it was open, it's closed. The windows, if they're wrong, I don't believe the frames are messed with. I don't even believe the actual frame of the windows are messed with, but maybe there was something in the middle that was taken out or whatever, reglassed or whatever. I don't know. This property was in a very, very bad shape. It is what it is. My next plan is to do the windows. And I'll be very frank with you. If this application is approved, I will deal with that. I assume it's going to be something in, close to $50,000, but I have a very good friend of mine who was visiting us last night. And he's knowledgeable enough. He's an architect. He's been a developer for a long time in Glendale and around. So he said, no, you're dreaming. 50,000 is not going to do this. I mean, you should be looking at maybe about $100,000. If I don't have the Mills concession, or whatever it's called, I'm not going to go through that route. I mean, we've lived in that house for 32 years. We've dealt with the windows. So I'll just let it be. I'm not going to spend $100,000 to do that. But if this is basically this is approved, this is an undertaking. I would like to do that to the house. The porch. Unfortunately, sadly, I will never open that. But I have something that might be of interest. I discussed it with my wife and we liked it. And if I may, I was thinking of, right now we have 6. I mean, it's the same one, but then I thought, oops, I don't have enough.
I can share. It's fine.
Yeah.
No.
So I thought
But you need it.
one of the possibilities that we would be happy, and I would actually like to do is to remove all the windows. Make it one big, and I called Glendale Glass, and I do believe they're professional enough. I've dealt with them a long time. And this is a 26-foot by 4 foot 9 inches piece of glass. They said no problem. It will be double glazed, or I think in here you call them dual plane, and what is it called? That's the safe version of tempered. Yeah. They gave me an estimate of, provided the site is prepared, they gave me an estimate of close to $6,000 to do that. Which, it's a possibility. It's something that I would, it would please us because it just opens up the whole thing. And from the outside, if you don't see the glass, it's a porch. But if you do that, then I have to look at the other side of it as well, And, it was suggested to me that the brick part of it, and Mr. Platt, it's not wood frame and stucco. The front part, all of it is brick.
I'm sorry, what are we talking about? The garage?
No, the whole house. It's all brick.
The house is all brick?
Yes, sir.
Underneath the wood shingles is brick?
Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Unusual.
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
It is. Anyway, I said if we're going to do that, just doing the front part is going to look odd and out of place. So we have to basically go around and do the sides as well. At least minimum of one of the windows, but ideally both of them together because that's where the brick begins. So again, excuse the lousy Photoshop work.
It's pretty good, actually.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That I need to send you one.
I'll take one of
okay,
theirs at the
it's okay.
end, so
Okay.
I'll have a look.
Or if you're sharing that,
That's fine. Here, we can share.
This is extra.
You can share.
yes.
Oh, you're talking about just the porch?
Yes.
Not the whole house?
The whole house, no, not opening the whole house. The whole house, I was talking about the windows, which, you know.
No, I meant in terms of the brick.
Yeah.
Brick is just at the porch.
No, well, it was around.
Yeah, you have to stay near
Oh,
the
I'm
microphone, sorry.
Anyway, it starts from the front of the house, and it turns around and goes back. It's like an L-shaped area. And the two columns are basically brick. And I learned that during the Northridge earthquake, because some of the plaster fell down. Scared the hell out of us. But
So in a way, that's actually a modification we would probably want to consider. If it's brick, exposing the brick, I would think if it was the original. Do you think it would have been stuccoed over the brick originally like
It's
that?
possible.
That they
Some-
built it with
some
brick and
craftsman
then-
houses. This is very unusual,
Yeah.
so we'd really have to do some real investigation. So if you were interested in entertaining Mills Act with modifications, I would recommend that we continue this to a date uncertain so that we could really work with Mr. Gregorians to think about it and do some investigative, open up some areas and all that.
Okay.
I think I'm basically done. That's all I have to.
Okay.
Thank you very much for your time.
May I ask you just a quick, just one question?
Absolutely.
So, just so I'm clear in terms of what how you understood the Mills Act program to be back then, was that the only time you were given any kind of a credit on your taxes was if you actually performed work that was then approved by the city, and then they would credit you back the money for your
Not
taxes.
approved by the city, but allowable expenses was the way it was put.
Okay. So
And
basically
allowable-
something.
Yeah, allowable expenses were replumbing, rewiring, re-roofing, nothing else, which already had
Yeah.
been done on the property. And, somebody said there was some confusion, but the
Really?
confusion should not have been there.
Yeah.
And, confusion doesn't.
And this was
Pay the bills.
this was the same year of designation, or was
Yes.
it the same year of designation?
Yes. I mean, if there is a letter from Mr. McKenna.
Yeah, I saw that letter.
Yeah.
It says that
I mean, that's
there's
basically
property tax incentive
that's,
program.
that's basically after the historical society people came and looked at the property. Then I got that letter, encouraging and basically that this is what's going to happen, and obviously I signed it and sent it back.
Yeah.
Then the gentleman, approached me, and he said, it's the Mills Act. And the contract, as I said, it's
Yeah.
identical to the current one. Maybe not 100%, but, when you read through it, it's just,
Because the contract, I don't have it memorized verbatim, but I don't think it talks about. I think it explains that it's just a reduction in the property tax, regardless of whether.
yeah, no, it didn't go into detail of what is allowable or not. The contract, part of it that basically, I remember very clearly, are the penalties
Yes, of
for you
Yeah.
breaking something or whatever, not complying, not complying.
Yes.
And those two are identical.
Yeah, that part's identical.
That one.
And then one last question.
Sure.
When you decided not to go forward with the Mills Act contract, you still understood that the house was designated historic, right?
Yes,
You understood that part.
I
was-
still understood.
Okay.
There is a difference.
You understood that there's-
Yeah. And thank you very much for asking me that.
Yeah.
At that point, I said, okay, you're an idiot. You should have read more. You should have understood more.
Yeah.
That wasn't the case. I was misled. This is what hurts me.
Yeah.
So I let it go. At that point of time, I was also aware that designating the property without the
Mills Act.
Mills Act or the property
Benefit.
tax rebate will inevitably affect its marketability and the price negatively. I'm of the opinion that due to demographic changes in our city, and I'm well aware of that, that situation has become more difficult now. And you know, I'm a very forward person, you know. If this is granted, I said what I will do, you know. If it's not granted, I would like to at least the city to be fair to me and not burn me and just remove this from the list. I'll be just as happy. Either way, I'll be just as
Well,
happy.
that's important information to know.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank
May I
you.
sit down and just...
Yes,
Please
of
sit down.
course.
Relax.
You must stand the rest of the meeting.
That's okay.
Okay, with that, we'll close the public hearing and go to discussion. Who would like to start?
I just want to know, is this thing from the city of Glendale on July 18th, 1997, is it applicable? Are we judging the house then, or are we judging the house now as far as the Mills Act? Because it appears to me that they're telling him that the benefits of historic resource designation include several incentives, and then they go to the property tax incentive program. So, since,
Do you have that letter from,
Yeah, I'm trying to, is it the 1997?
yes,
November 4th?
right, so
no, July
July
18th from
18th.
McKenna.
by John W. McKenna, Director of Planning.
I have May 18th and September 16th. Yeah, let me. Yeah, the way I read this letter is it was basically a letter that was sent to all of the property owners, just informing them that this is what you can do if your property is put on the Glendale Register, and if it is, then you're eligible for the property tax reduction. The first Mills Act contracts that I'm familiar with in Glendale were granted in 2002. Cities have to arrange with the state to become a Mills Act city. I've never seen that history, but I have tons of files upstairs that could have stuff buried in them. Perhaps we were issuing Mills Act contracts earlier. I don't think so, and I've never seen one. But to your question, it really doesn't matter what was said back then. We're looking at this in the 2019 Historic Preservation Commission, and I believe we should be using the standards of today. I'm sure everything Mr. Gregorians tells us is true, and it does sound like maybe things were said or people were looking at buildings differently then. But
It's interesting that
obviously the choice was made at some point not to have a Mills Act contract until this year.
It's interesting that if the city didn't have a Mills Act program, hadn't adopted the Mills Act program, that they would have even mentioned a tax incentive.
I agree,
right?
and that makes me wonder
Yeah.
if I need to dig
And that
through
but
those.
they also didn't call it out by name. You would think that they would have called it out by name in that paragraph, the Mills
Yeah,
Act
unless there
program.
was a program that predated
That
Mills
maybe the
Act
city,
that I've never heard of. So.
or maybe the city of Glendale had their own or something. It's hard to know.
They were beginning to work with the state to figure,
Yeah.
to get the Mills Act in place.
Yeah.
So saying that could be an incentive program coming.
Okay.
Yeah, and we can see where the discussion goes. I could certainly dig in as deeply as our records allow and see what the history is there. But I still believe that if we're granting a Mills Act at this point in history, one of the biggest issues we have in general through all of our design review, whether it's historic or not, is a sense of fairness with all of the people who precede whatever application we're considering at that moment. And to me, it's important not to kind of downgrade what we would look at today because of the possibility that something happened that long ago that we may not even be able to piece together. So,
Understood.
Okay.
Um,
I'm just confused, to tell you the truth, without having the city attorney look at this. I mean, I look at it and think, from the way I read it, that they are granting the property tax incentive, even though the property tax incentive wasn't there yet, but they're kind of saying, you can get it, even though we didn't get it till 2002, and this is 1997?
we may have had it earlier, but this is, if you read this letter, it says your property has been identified as having potential historic significance. Nothing final at the time of this letter. The Planning Division, as part of its ongoing effort to designate local historic resources, would like to list this property in the Glendale Register. We used to be more proactive in reaching out to property owners than we are now. In fact, I've been told we don't do that anymore. Some of my predecessors did. The Glendale Register was created by the recently adopted amendments to the municipal code. Listing in this register is an easier process than was previously used, a general plan amendment. And I misspoke earlier. The first, I can't remember what the number is. In 1977, we created a historic preservation element, one of the first preservation elements in the state, that listed a bunch of some of our major landmarks, some of the obvious landmarks. And then in 1997, there was a group of 10 or 12 properties that was added to that earlier list. And then together, those make up the 37 properties that went onto the Glendale Register in 97. But reading this letter to continue, it says the benefits of historic resource designation include several incentives. These are property tax reduction, use of the state historic building code, allowance of commercial use in residential, relaxed parking standards. Those are the incentives we still have today. They say the obligations of historic property ownership include administrative or historic preservation commission review of projects and an obligation to maintain the resource. So this letter is basically informational, saying here's this thing called the Glendale Register, here's what it might do to benefit you, let us know. So it's not obligating the city to designate anything.
So this letter is before the GR?
This letter is after or around the same time as the GR. Again, let me go to my files. I may have the actual month that we designated. So that, what was the month of that letter?
It's July 18th, 1997.
Yeah, so the Glendale Register was adopted in September 97. So it was kind of an effort that the city was making as it was preparing
They moved
to
so quick.
create a register. I know.
Wow.
Can you imagine?
Impressed. Goodness.
Don't get your any ideas.
Yeah.
So,
The good old days.
I know.
Okay.
I think, though, Mr. Morgan, I think a point that we should probably take is that the question you have of the legality of this letter or whatever is really not our purview at this point. We're being asked to designate the property, grant the property, or recommend a Mills Act on the property based on the way we normally do things, not validate the validity of this letter.
Maybe we should think about the intent of the Mills Act tax reduction and how that is intended to be used when we're designating properties, basically to help restore and return properties to their original.
And I understand that.
Much
The
of-
problem is,
yeah.
back in 1997, what was the intent when they were sending it to each of the individual 37?
But we're
Pieces of
looking
property.
at Mills Act, we're considering applying the mill or granting a Mills Act contract today, and then we should look at the context of what that means today. How would we want that tax benefit to be used on this property or applied to this property, ideally?
Or does the property rise to the level of something we would give the Mills Act today?
Well, it doesn't.
Okay.
I would say
Yeah.
it doesn't. But it did when they put it on
Not necessarily, not.
Then why
could have
did they
had
put it
different
on the
They
GR?
could have had different criteria.
So it did at the time.
Right, it could
whatever
have
Right.
been a week, yeah.
So we are doing today versus
Yes.
1997.
We're saying today, is it eligible for the Mills Act? So I have a couple of comments unless you want to continue.
No, I'm good.
You're good? Okay.
Yeah, I'm good.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, thank you very much for your history and for taking good care of this house. You have a beautiful home and great views from up there. I appreciated coming to see it. I'm sorry if you were misled or there was a misunderstanding way back then. From what we're looking at today, as I look at this Craftsman home, and as I look at the different elevations, even just if you want to flip through, Jay, like slide to slide, each facade is very incongruent with the other. there's, to me, a lot of the craftsman character-defining features have been lost, replaced, closed in, changed, from that covered porch to the addition to enclosed porch, the garage that doesn't seem really fitting with the home. So although it's a beautiful piece of property, to me, I wouldn't today designate it as a historic property. Therefore, I would not give the Mills Act to it based on that. So that's my feeling and recommendation on this property. But I completely understand if you don't want to continue on the register, that's your decision too.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to say I basically agree with that position as well. Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, by today's standards, we probably would not, as has been stated, put it on the register. If we did grant a Mills Act contract, we'd probably want to ask that all of the things that have been put in place be reversed. And I'm going to guess at this point in time, that would just be a little too much to ask.
It would be hard to even meet the standards with the windows unless we found. Mr. Gregorians has a photograph of the house framed at home. Unfortunately, the image of the house is really tiny and this land around it's big, and I couldn't, looking at it, make out anything about the windows.
Yeah.
So we, under the standards, listen to this class, under the standards, we don't want to create a false sense of history. We don't want to speculate about what kinds of windows would have been there. And we certainly wouldn't put in windows to match the 1924
Yeah.
edition, so.
Right.
And the
So
owner
it
already
would be
very,
tough to do this. Yeah.
and the owner already very clearly said he would never
porch.
unenclose the porch.
Understood.
That's one of the character-defining features of Craftsman. So.
Yeah.
And we do know that our city council also is not very fond of multiple window replacements, be they,
It would surprise me if it made it that far. But,
right.
One other question, just on this paragraph. The Glendale Municipal Code, Chapter 15.20, requires written consent of property owners prior to designating their property as a historic resource. So we have his original signature somewhere?
Yeah, he has that.
we should. I haven't seen
Okay,
it.
I'm just curious.
Yeah.
Well, he knew it
He
was
said-
being
he said he
designated.
signed it, and-
He understood
Okay.
that it was
Well-
on the register.
I'd like to see things, but yeah.
Yeah, no, as a historian, you would be appalled by our early files.
I would.
Our modern contemporary files are great, maybe even have too much information, but the old ones are rough, so.
Okay, so with that, do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion. I move that the property at 1527 Cedar Hill Road not be recommended for the Mills Act contract.
Second.
All right. Commissioner Morgan?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, yes.
Yes.
Commissioner Craignani?
Yes.
Commissioner Shire?
Yes.
Chair Vartanian?
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes 4-0 to not recommend the Mills Act, and I can work with Mr. Gregorians on the next steps in coming weeks. Okay.
Thank you
Thanks
for
for coming.
putting all this information
Yes,
together.
thanks for putting the packet together.
Thank you.
It's very informative.
Okay, we're going to move on to item B, and I will be recusing myself because of my proximity within the 500-foot radius.
Do you want to wait for that?
Oh, did
Or
we
do
want to try to wait for Commissioner Dune?
I can text him.
We can just move on to C for now.
Why don't you take a 5 minute?
I'm
Well,
going
well,
to
one thing,
ask
we could also ask the
owner
applicant,
if that
yeah.
would be okay. Are you in a rush to get out of here?
No, I'm fine. I feel like you're all leaving me.
Sorry.
No, I'm just joking. You're
Oh.
leaving and Mr. Doodles is
Oh,
here.
right.
Yeah, so we thought we would wait for
Yeah,
him.
well,
We would like to
if we do
try to
this, we'll
move you
get
to see
four,
if we
we'll
can
get
get
four
him here.
commissioners. so.
Okay, so we'll move on to item C, which is 1235 Glenwood Road, Glendale Register nomination and Mills Act application.
Okay. There's a preview. All right, so we are a little further west than we were. We're at the corner of Glenwood and Grandview. And this is an interesting property. It's another Craftsman house, perhaps more intact than the house we just looked at, but not 100%, so we'll discuss that as we go forward. And I didn't really prep as well as I should have with the timeline tonight. So I'll get my notes out. Yeah, so this house was built in downtown Glendale in 1910, or around 1910, and it was built at the location of what is now the office building for where the Social Security office is on Broadway. And the nomination is a little confusing in terms of the timeline and the history of this area. And Charlie Fisher, who prepared it, is a really good researcher, and I think it's a sign that there's a bit of a muddle in what really happened in terms of whether Ralph's, bought this property. Charlie has records that, or when he researched the county records, he showed that the Ralph's Grocery Company did own this property at one point. In his nomination, he says that when Ralph's built its market at the corner of Wilson and Orange, that's when this house was moved. When I started looking at the aerials and the Sanborn maps, I realized, no, this house was further south. And as far as I know, the market that was there was never Ralph's. It was always Alexander's Market that was designed by Morgan, Walls, and Clements, kind of a nice, simple, streamlined, modern building. And that building became Joann's Fabrics. And then when Joann's was torn down, we now have, what we have. So, it's not entirely clear what happened there, but we do know the house was picked up and moved. Charlie's research said that Ralph's offered the properties to anyone who would come and pick them up and take them somewhere. And so Mr. Carruthers evidently looked at this house and said it would be a very nice house for his daughter who was getting married. He already owned several parcels near the intersection of Glenwood and Grandview, so the house was moved here. And we do have a permit record telling us that the house was moved. Not only does it say it was moved, but it says the route that the house took through the city to get from point A to point B. So that's kind of cool.
That's cool.
It's a relatively early example of Craftsman architecture, especially in this neighborhood, though it obviously wasn't built in this neighborhood. It's kind of the pitch of the roof tells you it's a little earlier than some of the more classic Craftsman that we see just a few years after this. It's got a wraparound porch, which is a key feature. And the house, besides having the dramatic gables at the roof and the interesting geometry, has lots of interesting features. Here's a picture of Mr. and Mrs. Carruthers and then the Carruthers clan, to put some blurry faces on this story. But when we look at the features of the house, it's got a lot going on. It's got a lot of really key features. It's got this interesting shingling pattern that you see with these irregular width and length shingles, which we don't see that often. It's not unheard of. These shingles are up in the gable ends of the prominent gables. Then on the walls, you have the more standard horizontal clapboard siding. We have these windows at the front. The two front windows facing the porch and facing the street both have leaded glass in the transoms, and then single light or just single light operable or fixed sash below. Up in the gables, we have these kind of interesting double vents with a little window between. The windows have the perimeter grid. That's one of the classic window styles of the Craftsman era. And then there are also these knee brackets that extend out under the wide eaves. When we look at the porch, you see the tapered columns. And it was kind of fun to realize when I was there with the gravettes that the backside of the columns are flat, rather than tapered in the way you'd expect, but it seems to be the way it was built. You can see the window to the right with the leaded glass and the fixed panel below. And then the other windows on the house had the perimeter grids similar to the little windows up in the attic. So both street facades have their original windows. The original garage evidently was moved with the house and then was demolished by a previous owner. And this kind of stucco garage you see at the bottom was built. Unfortunately, the windows at the rear and the side facade, the east and the north facades, were replaced at some point. And so we're recommending a Mills Act condition that those windows be replaced. And since we have a model for these perimeter grid windows. That seems like the best way to go. I may have gotten the Gravette's Hope up because there are some houses, even from the Craftsman era, that kind of put their money up front and put the nicer quality windows with the more intricate mutton pattern, and then side windows and back windows may have been simpler. That's a possibility, but we don't know. So again, this is a little speculative, but since we have sash on the house, we do have a model for what new sash could look like.
And this was it a corner house before it was moved?
It was not.
No.
So, yeah, which is an interesting point, because then this was the side facade thing. I didn't even put that together, so. So we come around and we see the exposed rafter tails. The door leading into the kind of laundry room area there is an obvious replacement. Another Mills Act condition would be to replace that with the door more in keeping with the Craftsman style. And then there's this fence. You're going to see two fences tonight, and fences can be seen as ephemeral pieces. In general, when we're reviewing new fences for historic properties or even for non-historic properties, we try to avoid having them kind of obscure features and volumes of the original house, or at least do that a little further away from the prominent portions of the house. In the case of this fence, staff is recommending that this house, as well as the other corner house you're going to be looking at, have small yards, like a lot of corner houses, very small yards. This house in particular. So it's very common as you go through the neighborhoods and you see the corner conditions to have fences that pop out from the sides. So inside this historic district, we do have walls and fences that kind of have a similar configuration. Usually they don't come all the way forward to the front portion of the house this way. So there are two or three issues here. One is that this is kind of disrupting the openness of the front porch. There's a little return back here in this area at the end of what I call the middle and the kind of the back of the main portion of the house. There's an existing return in the fence, and one way I thought of looking at this to help maintain a sense of privacy, security, and also yard would be to remove this section, these three panels, including the gate, which would bring these windows back more into view, allow the main portion of the house to be more visible to the street, and still provide the kind of backyard qualities that they're looking for. The other issue is that this is unpainted wood, and some of it's pressure-treated wood, which is not always the most aesthetically wonderful look. What one thought would be to paint, if the commission's inclined to allow the fence to remain in at least part of its current look, to paint it so that it would kind of blend in better with the overall look of the house. So we have a list of recommended conditions, which would be replacing the vinyl windows at the north and east. One other thing I forgot to mention is at the front porch, the panel, the siding between the columns is not original siding. It's a modern material. And its original condition isn't clear, but this is a common look for, it's not the most common look. Most porches are open, but there are plenty of Craftsman houses that have kind of a low wall spanning between the columns, and in many cases that would be clad with similar cladding as the walls. So one of the conditions would be to reclad this area with new wood cladding to match the cladding on the walls. There's a question about the height of this that I started looking at it and I was looking at other examples to kind of put this in context. And I do think that this is a little high. And when you look at the columns, there's a little molding trim that wraps around the center of the columns. You can see here like a belt. And when I was looking at other examples, the solid wall between the columns usually is at a lower level, just by a few inches. That gives kind of a different rhythm to this. So I would I don't think I included that in the written recommendation. Yeah, but I did say that the cladding should be replaced to match the historic wall siding in terms of dimension and detailing. I would add that the commission might want to consider lowering the height if you're inclined to go forward with the conditions.
Do you have a picture of what you would like it to look like after we take it off?
I have a word picture.
Yeah, unfortunately, it doesn't work for me.
Yeah, no, sorry. I can do my best to describe it. It would look similar to the way it does now. This is, I don't know, this is almost like a particle board. It's similar, if you remember the house on Bywater, that's a modern Buff and Hensman house that had some wood siding that had been possibly replaced, we didn't know. There's something very similar to me about this material. The look would be similar, but in terms of the height, if this is the belt, these little bands that kind of go around, which you see here, it forms almost like a little shelf, I would drop the height down maybe just 3 inches so that the cap piece would be lower the cap of the wall section would be lower than this little belt course around the column, and it would come in just a little below it, and then be resized so that it would die into whatever the width of the tapered column at that point is. Does that help?
It helps a little bit, but so you're asking them to remove the siding that's there now and replace it with something that looks similar?
Yes, that would be wood siding that would have the same profiles as the clapboard siding. This has kind of it's called a shiplap siding, where there's a notch and then it kind of fits together. It's just a different appearance. It gives an overall flatter look instead of the zigzag dimension you get when you look at clapboard siding in profile.
Which is what's on the house itself.
You can see it right next
Right.
to the front door there. yeah.
Do we have any pictures of the house originally or when it was being moved?
No.
Okay, because to me, this looks very different to have it so enclosed for a craftsman. Many of the craftsman examples I saw were much more open with railings. It was raised up off the floor level, and again, I completely agree. The proportions of the height is not correct currently, so if you lower it, that would be better. But I think there's a few other options available that might even be more open and look
And maybe
better.
maybe not even as costly if they're having to take this out anyway.
But I was just
Which run the risk of being speculative
Okay.
and kind of designed.
how do we
to-
know if this is
We
original?
don't. This is an
Oh.
open question, and it's
Yeah.
part of why, I put it in as a condition
Yeah.
to open the discussion, basically. In general, when people change things, you sort of work with what you have. And I've seen this look before, except the height. And if you were interested in more research, I could do that if you wanted to continue.
Would it have a gap at the bottom, or would it go all the way to the ground?
Usually you want a gap for drainage,
Yeah.
or
You've seen it
something. There's something unusual going on here.
Yeah, this
Right.
doesn't
And
look
I
right.
just, and I can't, but the material is more modern than the
We know it's not a-
move
Yeah.
in 1934, so.
Correct.
Or is it 1934? When was the move?
Thereabouts.
31.
31.
So,
Oh, it's even newer than it would be from 31.
yeah.
Because my thought is if you had this similar to start with, you typically are replacing it because you want something different. Either they wanted to close it in, they wanted more privacy, that's why it's got higher, more solid all the way to the floor surface. But it doesn't seem to be what nearly would have been original.
No, I understand that as a
Yeah.
reasonable guess, and sometimes if the wood rots out, they change the wood, the framing's okay, they want to keep it. It's easier to just slap some new stuff on the face of it.
Yeah.
We could look very carefully at the attachment of the wood. We could do some
Open
forensic
it up.
work where we pulled off the inboard face in one area and
Maybe
just
it's
see what's
inside.
going on in there. Yeah. So that would be a possibility.
That group shot photo, I think, was that in front of a different house? Does that say 1235 or,
Yeah, that.
because there it clearly looks like, I think that's the
Yeah, but I don't
veranda.
I don't think that's the
this is the house. This looks like a hipped roof
It's a good
coming
design.
down
Very-
I
here.
think that one might have said 1231 for the
Yeah.
group shot. So,
Yeah, they own several houses around there.
okay. That one looks.
If we're
completely-
really, if your direction is to dig into this more, we'll probably talk to the Grovettes about bringing Charlie Fisher in a little bit, who kind of pulled these images. This house, I can't say. It has tapered column, but the tapered column's a dime a dozen. It's hard to say, but we'd have to look at these carefully and see. But that's a really good point. This one I could say isn't the house, but this one I can't say is or isn't. So, which would give us a direction to go with just tapered columns, but even that's a little unusual to have floor to beam columns without some sort of kind of pier element. But the wonderful thing about old buildings is they always surprise you, and you see all sorts of quirks that you wouldn't expect. So,
So you were going to go through your list
Yeah.
of conditions, Jay.
all right, I think I was almost done. I had to backtrack because I forgot about the porch. We talked about removing a section of the porch and painting it, and then the entire house could use a full paint job, and then the rear door that I mentioned before to be more appropriate to the style of the house.
Does the design of the garage bother you at all? And the roof?
It again raises interesting questions, and I was like, sometimes I think it's better to say it is what it is rather than to go back and try to craftsmanize it.
Yeah.
Just the no roof overhang, it looked like, or minimal,
Yeah, no,
is
it's
strange. Yeah.
They didn't try, that's for sure.
well, they tried to differentiate.
Yes, they did.
But be compatible.
Yeah.
Okay, we still need to open.
Yeah, I've got
Alright,
other
do you have
questions,
more
but we'll wait.
questions?
No, we'll do it.
No, I'm good.
Should I do it afterwards? Okay. We'll open the public hearing and call up Hannah Gravett.
Hi.
Hi.
Well, first, thank you. Thank you to Jay for the thoughtful report and spending time with us to help us figure out some of these mysteries with our home. And thank you to all of you for reading the report and to you for coming. Thank you very much. Coming and see our home. It was fun to share with you. I think, well, actually, I'll start. We do this, Jay, or this came up a little bit in the report, but what we do know, the little bit that we do know about the history is that our neighbors, right, the home right next to us, it did to me look like one of those photos. I couldn't tell for the top, but the bottom one does look like our neighbor's home, which does have an open porch that was the owner. Carruthers, Mr. Carruthers lived and owned all the land, and he lived in the neighbor's home, which is a really large, potentially beautiful home that maybe they also should consider. We could think about later, maybe like a district between the two of us, but the homes don't look the same, but it's also a craftsman home, and I would guess that that was the Mr. Carruthers, and then he purchased our home and moved it for his daughter to live in. But yeah, but we've had the privilege of being the owners of this house for just a little over a year. We moved to, and we're new residents of Glendale. We moved here from San Diego, so my work brought me to LA County, LA region. I work near downtown LA, and we came here. No, we were looking for a craftsman home. And so when we saw this one, we weren't expecting we would end up in Glendale, knowing we were looking for a craftsman home. We started out looking at lots of homes in Pasadena and in around Pasadena and South Pasadena and in the city of LA. And like every home that we could afford in those areas that was a craftsman home was just too far gone. It was too far gone. So when we saw this home in Glendale, and when I saw the wraparound porch and the front door, which now the front door is even more beautiful than the photo you saw because we've already done some restoring and we've stripped the paint and restored the front door, and it's beautiful. So when we saw the porch and the door, I knew it was our home. It was the home for us. So when we've already spent, like I said, a year getting acquainted with the home and with Glendale. We love it here. We love the house. We've already done some work inside, stripping paint, restoring things, and we knew that was kind of our mission, what we wanted to do, and we wanted to find a home that had enough of the original potential for us to see a vision for it and then, put in the work to get it back to where it was. So that's partly why we're here, obviously, is we do really love this house. And we feel like the story of it being, from downtown Glendale, and there's not many of those left. We feel like this is one of the few that are left, and we want to make sure it stays that way. We want to make sure we don't ever plan to leave, but if we ever leave, we don't want the house to look like the garage. We want the house to look the way the house looks. So we plan to do everything we can while we're there, and we want to protect that and keep it that way because it is so beautiful. The only other thing I would say, we have a 3-year-old. Some of the pictures embarrassingly expose some of our toys in the backyard. We weren't prepared for the photo shoot. But so to the comments, if I can just say a little bit to the comments around, overall, the conditions are things that we completely like agree with and support and are happy to do and would do that work anyways, just in our own personal mission to bring this house back to where it's been. In terms of the conversation about the porch and the little bit of the fence, the only thing I would say, the one thing we don't love about this house is how busy Grandview is and how fast. I don't know if you spent much time on the corner of Glenwood and Grandview, but it's a very busy intersection, and people like to drive very, very fast and loud up Grandview, unfortunately, and we have a 3-year-old. And so some of the components, the fence is important, and we appreciate your consideration even just to be able to keep part of the fence for our backyard. But even that, what Jay is referencing is probably like a 6-foot portion, right, that comes all the way up to the front. We're open and willing to do whatever we need to do to, to be able to have this opportunity with this home and with this consideration, but we would love to be able to keep as much of the fence as possible just for our own safety, or even if there could be like a timeline so we can wait until our child like has a sense of fear, because partly about that portion of the fence, it does close off the backyard, but what it does open and expose is that where it goes from the front portion to the middle portion is our beautiful wraparound porch has 2 exits. So there are stairs that go down, and it would open up and expose right in front of those windows right to the street. And actually the porch, because the front yard is so open, the porch is actually a place where we spend a whole bunch of time right now as a family. It's a beautiful place to sit, and the breeze comes through, and you can see Griffith Park beautifully right from there. It's an amazing place to sit, and we spend a lot of time playing on the porch, and so it does just expose that, and it is a very busy street, so both for privacy and safety. So even if there's a way to keep it, we would love that, or if there's a way to keep it for a few years until our 3-year-old, has a little more sense about him, that would also be appreciated. And then same with the front porch. Absolutely bringing the materials back is something we already plan to do. Removing or lowering, again, it's just, it's a very busy intersection, and at night, you can see in and out everything, and that porch does offer makes us feel just a little bit protected from that busy corner. But other than that, thank you very much for considering this, and we really feel honored and privileged to own this home, and we feel excited about the opportunity to bring it back to its original, even more of its original beauty.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we have one more speaker, Catherine Yurka.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Catherine Yurka, and I'm the Chair of Preservation Advocacy for the Glendale Historical Society. And I'm really excited about all 3 houses that are coming before you tonight, and it's been a great couple months for Glendale Register Properties. I just wanted to say a particular word about the house on Glenwood, because there are certain homes that are magnets for our members, and this is one of them. Like, people write to me about this house. When it went up for sale, people were like, have you seen that Craftsman? What's going to happen to it? Oh, we're so worried. And sometimes not even members have contacted us about Craftsman and about this house in particular. And so I just want to say how overjoyed we are that it's fallen into the right hands, and that this couple is really interested in being good stewards of the property. It's also nice to see someone who's committing to undoing work that, based on the permit record, was unpermitted work, and that didn't receive approval. So I really commend them for their willingness to bring this house back. I did want to just say something about the porch and the infill there. As I think I've mentioned this before, when we were reviewing the South Glendale Historic Resources Survey, I did walk virtually every street in South Glendale. And when I saw photos of this house, it didn't occur to me that it wasn't original, because it is something that I saw on Craftsman, to have that kind of wood as a kind of barrier between the posts. I agree that it's a little bit too high, but I hope that the owners would be allowed to keep that in the version using better materials. Anyway, thanks for your consideration.
Thanks,
Thank
Catherine.
you. Okay, that was my last card. We'll close the public hearing and open it up to discussion. Who would like to start?
Well, I can say that going to the Grovet's house, it was stepping back in time, and it's such a cool thing that it was in downtown Glendale, and they moved it to an area that preserved it. So I think that's, if it had been South Glendale, it would already been gone. So it was great. And to be allowed to go inside the house and see all the work that they're doing inside, you really know that the house found the right people. So it was just a lot of fun. I think some of the things I agree with on some of the things that Jay said, but because of their kids, I am a little concerned about, the removing the non-historic cladding. I would like to see some more research on that before the actual work was done. Because to replace it with something that's going to be almost the exact same thing seems to be a little silly. But other than that, I think it'll be a great addition to the Glendale Register. It's just, you stand on that porch and it's just, you're back in my period of Glendale, so it's just perfect. So I thank them very much for having the house find them and for being part of the house and welcome to Glendale. There are a lot of homes, actually, that you'd be surprised in Glendale that are really, really cool, that aren't in Pasadena or Burbank or anywhere else. So, I think you'll be a great asset. So I don't really have much else other than I agree with almost all of them except the removing the non-historic cladding on the front porch. But if something can be worked or if you can look at it and see what originally was there, that's my only concern.
Want me to go? Okay. Thank you guys for bringing the house forward. I'm sorry I wasn't able to make it this past weekend, but I've been in that house many times. It's been for sale a few times the last couple of years, or a couple of times the last few years. It's a great house, and when I saw that it came up, I thought, wow, it's about time. It really is. So thank you. Yeah, I don't have a lot of comments besides what we're gonna. Well, actually, I do have a couple comments. Jay, 2 questions. One, how do you feel about the chimney? It looks like it might be stucco clad. Would it have been?
Yeah, it was permitted. It was redone after the earthquake. It probably would have been brick originally.
Because it was permitted, we're kind of just okay. Do we want to talk about trying to? There
are certain things that I think it is what it is, and
Okay.
if we're trying to go back and falsify this craftsman-y look, I'm not always thinking that's the right direction.
Okay.
But we can't deny aesthetics play a role. So
Okay. And then regarding the fence and remembering some of the comments our council members have made over the last couple of years, I didn't see, at least in the timeline of permits, a permit for the fence. So I'm a little bit curious about, do you think the way that the fence is now, is it in a position where it could be permitted?
the location, yeah, it's not in the side yard setback.
Okay.
There's a 6-foot setback from the back of the sidewalk, and it's okay there. It's okay with the design. I think Kathy Yurka is very familiar with a fence that was unfortunately approved by staff. Hello. That was left unpainted, and the results did not work very well in the historic context. We've learned a big lesson from this.
Okay.
This fence looks, I'll say, 1,000,000 times better than that one does, but I still think wood fences in a historic setting should usually be painted.
Okay.
And I think that would be the case here. I'm not sure what to do about the pressure-treated lumber. Is really, you only notice that when you're right up close to it.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, so I'm just trying to get ahead of any question that council might have about a fence that's not permitted, and they don't want to be in the business of approving properties that have unpermitted features such as walls and fences. I mean, we got into a big debate with them about, or they got into a big debate about it. And
Yeah,
so I would want to make
where
sure
you
they
take this,
understand.
we could work that into a permit. So.
Okay. And then I guess those were my only two questions, really. I had forgotten that the steps from the porch led backwards there, and so I'm knowing the kind of foot traffic that goes on there, and the fact that it's kind of a secluded part of the house, despite the fact that it's right on the street. I don't know. I'm kind of neither here nor there about it. I like the idea of opening it up and be able to see more, but I also can understand their concern about safety, not even just the toddler, just people. It's very inviting. The stairs being so close to the sidewalk there are very inviting. So maybe there's yeah. So I get why we would want to open that up. And I think if we asked them just to lower it a little bit, that would probably look weird. Just that section, if that section was maybe a foot lower, would that look weird along with the rest of the fence being taller? That would look
I don't
odd.
think it would do the trick.
No.
So.
well, I know what you're trying to do is try to expose more of what we see.
Yeah, we're trying, and I totally hear where the Gravettes are coming from. We do have the ability through the Mills Act to add to the timeline if you were inclined to let little Gravette grow a little more. And we're talking about what
You are not allowed to have any more children.
I'm guessing this is like a 12 or 16-foot section from the column here to this point where the return goes back to the wall.
And back to the permitting question, the city would allow for the fence to go that far forward, right? Do you think?
Forward toward the street?
Yeah, to where it is,
No.
that, along the parallel to the house.
We
to
don't,
that.
we don't really have any zoning rules.
You don't.
That's
Okay.
just a design issue.
Okay. Okay. Well, I mean, I know what we all kind of know. My office is just a few blocks from there, so I know how busy and that corner is, and kids walking from school, and I could just see those steps being a bit inviting from a loitering standpoint, and all sorts of other things. The front steps are 25 feet back from the curb. These are 6 feet from the
Yeah,
curb, and it's
We did talk when I was at the site about the possibility of a modest gate on the porch itself between the column and the wall, just to kind of keep the kid or kids from running out there. It wouldn't be a perfect security barrier, but the
Right.
porch is already open, so.
all right. Well, those are my thoughts on it. I'm curious to hear what everyone else has to say.
Well, and looks like there's a hedge along the house. Could you continue some kind of landscaping low, just for a little bit of continuation and privacy, or with it, but still achieving the result of being able to see the windows in that facade?
Interesting. So just to run the hedge up to that where the fence is.
Yeah,
maybe.
if you kept it low enough that you could expose the facade and achieve what we're trying to, but move the fence to the corner where Jay suggested.
So are you saying bring the hedge across this
Yeah.
area?
I mean, they could do that anyway.
Right.
They could do that
They
without
wouldn't
a
need our
permit,
permission,
yeah.
but-
Right.
So that's
But
definitely.
that's an idea that might help achieve, or be a nice middle ground.
Because we also discussed the idea of running the hedge further along the front of the property to kind of secure the front yard a little
Oh, yeah.
more. So that would be in keeping with that idea.
And that maybe could be done before the fence comes down even. Give the hedge some time to grow in and then pull the fence down even. I
Yeah,
don't see where it
depending
goes,
on the
maybe.
timeline, if you put it as a condition.
Okay. That's it for me.
Well, thank you for bringing this before us. I apologize for not making it to your home, the only one I didn't get to see. I'm sorry. But yes, thank you. I'm so glad you have joined Glendale and that you're so excited about the house, and you'll be great stewards of it. And I find it, a very attractive craftsman, and I agree with all of staff's conditions and would recommend that we move forward with putting those conditions and then just working out the timeline to be appropriate.
Yeah, it's kind of a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Can you
And
fill the-
just to clarify, you're okay with the wall at the porch, which you were questioning before?
The front porch
Oh, the
wall.
style, lowering and the same material?
Well, keeping a solid clad wall?
If it's lowered and you think that there are good examples, and again, I think Kathy Yerka spoke to it, that's okay.
Okay.
And then let's maybe add a condition to permit the fence, especially if we think it may be an issue with council.
Yeah.
If we could do that.
Yeah, we don't usually condition permitting,
Okay.
but I'll
We
I'll
can
make sure it happens.
suggest.
I've got it in my notes
Okay,
already, so.
great. That's all.
So I too want to apologize that I was out of town and unable to stop by. I do go up to the Village Bakery quite a bit, so I have driven by your house over the years, and I'm glad we have such a well-kept craftsman being brought forward to add to our register, which needs more craftsman homes. And I too agree with all of the conditions. I think we're just open on the side fence. Do we all agree on painting that
Yes.
as a condition?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably a good idea.
And then I think the only item then is, would we want to recommend that part of it be replaced with hedge or leave it as is? So do we have
Oh, consensus on the fence.
consensus on that?
There it is.
Well, if we agree with the conditions
Yeah.
suggest moving it. It's their choice if they want to
Put the
put a
hedge,
hedge.
yeah.
That was just a suggestion that might help them.
Well, right, do we want to leave that as a
Although
suggestion,
to
or?
Commissioner Crignotti's point, if we want to condition the removal of the fence on a timeline to allow the hedge to kind
Yeah.
of take root and do its thing.
Okay. Yeah, so maybe, could you maybe throw up the list of conditions again, so we can just see them? And because I think if we make our motion, we want to put timelines on them at that point, or would we do the timelines after?
Well, you often spread the timeline
That's what I mean.
depending on the easy things we do fast
Yeah.
and the harder
We
things.
didn't get a we didn't get a timeline, right, with the application for any work. Okay.
All of these are fairly major, fairly
They are.
costly, so you can take that into account. The wood door at the back isn't a big deal. But.
Nope.
Well, if we did the windows
Yeah.
as,
Maybe they can
as
be in
like
like
a
a-
2-year or so, and if we want to give the fence the longer, do the front porch and the fence for another 2 years, so there's a 4-year total.
2022 and 2024.
Yeah, maybe
We typically-
how many windows is it?
Oh,
I mean, it's
14 was it? 12.
12, okay.
12.
So I feel like maybe even if they don't have to do it in exactly our timeline, but maybe we say like one side of the house windows in 2 years and then the other. That's a lot of windows to do all at once. Maybe we can give them the grace of half at one time and half later, and then if they can get them done sooner, great. But
To make life easier, if you want to reopen the hearing and ask what's
you can do
realistic, and just see if that jives with what you're thinking.
yeah, I'm gonna open it.
If you have thoughts on it. Yeah, we'll open the hearing. Yeah, come on
Yeah.
up.
So you've seen the list, right? Okay.
Yeah, we have seen the list.
Okay.
And yeah, I think, to be honest,
You can come
speak for
too.
both of us up here, but
Come both, yeah.
I have to go home with them.
Then you
I mean, I think to be honest, the windows, we probably would do them all at the same time
Okay.
anyways, because
Okay.
it's just easier.
We already
in the
have an
long run,
estimate
cheaper.
from,
We have- Yeah,
Good.
yeah, so
preservationist,
windows,
so-
yeah, I think we'll probably, and windows probably, but yeah, I mean, painting is a big job.
Yes.
And you'll want to
So
do
it's
that
like
after the windows.
The thing that feels,
Yeah.
yeah, doable in the shorter term, to be honest, is like back door and windows, and then,
So for 2 years for that
Yeah.
would work?
yeah, I think so.
And then do the other ones for an additional 2 years, so 4 years out?
Yeah, let's see, so the 4 years out would be painting
The whole house,
the whole house and the fence.
the fence, and then the
Fence
front
and the
porch.
front
Oh, and the porch, yeah. Yeah, is there a way to get like another couple years on the paint? I mean, the painting is just gonna be so expensive.
Yeah, but the paint's what's going to protect the historic property.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
on a wood,
Well, the truth be
on a
told,
wood-sided house.
The truth be told, the paint really will be last unless they do the
Yeah.
painting in parts.
So
So
that's, yeah, because we kind of have to do the porch first.
Right.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense to paint
Do
everything.
the porch and fence first and then the paint.
So it's like windows, porch, and door are gonna have to get done
And then-
before we can, it's, you know, to be,
you might want to consider painting the fence sooner because that's a long time. The fence
yeah.
itself,
No, we
'cause
could,
that's
yeah, we could paint the fence
exposed.
sooner,
But
for
like
sure.
the rest, I think the painting should be the very last thing.
Yeah.
So if it's at the end of the 4th year, is that, or do you maybe need another
Yeah,
6 months?
no, that's, that feels doable.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
4 year, we don't usually go much beyond
Okay.
4
Yeah,
years, and you will be receiving significant tax savings
right,
by
yeah.
then.
Yeah.
Yes,
That'll help.
to go toward that.
That will help. So, yeah.
Okay.
Wait,
You get all of that?
and so you're okay with the replacing the non-historic cladding on the porch itself?
Yes.
The cladding,
Yes,
yes.
We were
Okay.
prepared
Yeah.
to do
And
that.
drop it in a couple of
Dropping
inches.
it a little bit.
Wouldn't be
I
much.
think that's probably doable. Yeah, I mean, I definitely want to dig into some.
What I would
research.
love-
Do something that's appropriate.
I would love for you guys to have someone pull off the inner face of one and
see.
call me, and I'll come
Yeah.
look,
Yeah.
and we'll talk
Yes.
about it. And
Totally.
if we discover something weird, we can bring it back to these guys
Yeah.
for information, or.
Totally.
So,
And
okay.
again, even on that, some of the porch work, we've already, for the windows and the porch work, we've already contacted like contractors that
Contractors,
work
too.
on historic homes, and so that feels like something already kind of in motion.
Great.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, cool.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so let me recap the conditions and the timeline before you make a motion. We're going to replace 12 windows with new wood windows with perimeter grids to match the existing windows at the west facade. and all details. So it'll have the grids, it'll have the little lugs that hang on from the upper sash. That will be done within 2 years, and then I'll group them. We're going to replace the rear door facing Grandview with the new door to match, be more appropriate. That'll be in the first 2 years. And then within 4 years, we're going to remove the non-historic cladding at the porch, replace it with new cladding, with the caveat that we'll investigate what's going on in there and see if we learn anything to make that decision change. And then we're going to remove the section of fence between the existing return and the porch, also within 4 years. In the meantime, the Gravettes can plant a hedge, but that's something we're not going to be involved with. And then the house will be fully painted also within the 4 years.
Great.
4 years.
Okay. So I'll make a motion. I move that the Historic Preservation Commission recommend to the City Council that the property at 1235 Glenwood Road be called the Cole Carruthers House, be designated as a historic resource on the Glendale Register of Historic Resources, and be granted a Mills Act contract with the conditions we just discussed.
I second.
All right. Roll call will be Commissioner Morgan,
Yes.
Commissioner Shire,
Yes.
Commissioner Crignati,
Yes.
Chair Vartanian.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Congratulations.
So we will bring this to council soon.
Okay. I'm not sure that Commissioner Doom is going to appear, although he
No, I
has
just
been
got
known
a,
to
I
show
just
up
got a
late
text
sometimes.
from him. His thing is, probably not. We are in the second game, best 3 out of 5.
Uh-oh. Okay.
Okay.
He's got to support the team. Okay, well
I
then
think
you
we
should,
move forward with Don Jose.
yeah, there's 3 of us. We have a quorum.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night. Okay, I am going to go to the back.
Okay.
Okay.
Chair Vartanian is recusing herself for this next item.
Did I give you the wrong one? No,
Yeah.
that's the only one. Oh, there it is. Yep.
We're moving on to item 7B, 1116 Don Jose Drive, Glendale Register nomination and Mills Act application. Take it away, Jay.
Right. Okay, backtrack.
To be clear, she's recusing herself due to the proximity with which she lives to the property.
And to be clear, this is a peaceful transition of power. Our vice
We'll
chair.
see.
That's right. Okay, here we are in the Ross Moyne Historic District. 1116 Don Jose is a contributor in the district, and it's a very nice example of the colonial revival style, which we have several other colonial revivals on the register. It's not the most common style that we find in Glendale. It's definitely of interest. This is a somewhat later example from the 30s, so it's 1933. Doing a little research, stylistic research, I confirmed what I sort of guessed, which is that as the style progressed from the 20s to the 20s tended to be more of the traditional, symmetrical, boxy colonial revivals that we think of when we think about the style back east. And then as the style kind of morphed to just accommodate different lifestyles and also different, places, it started becoming more asymmetrical. So this is an example of an asymmetrical colonial revival with a 2-story main volume and then a 1-story kind of L wing attached to the north. The house was built for Josiah and Lillian Wright, who lived there for about 10 years. We don't have much information about them to suggest that they were significant. Nonetheless, according to our naming policy, we're recommending that it be called the Wright House. And the house has a bunch of interesting features.
Can you go full screen? Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
There you go.
Thanks.
So here's the 2-story volume that then has the projecting bay with the front gable, the 1-story living room wing. A lot of this house is kind of about this kind of front entry portico. I'll show you some details in a second. This is a shot from the corner looking southeast, so you can see the volumes, how the volumes interact. This portion of the house is an addition that was built in 1953. And we don't often see additions on the front portions of houses that go on the Glendale Register, so I just want to draw your attention to it. This is a modest addition, and it's very well done. I think they did do something interesting with this cornice line, where they built a tiny little bit of roof above it to kind of just give the hint of roof, and it sort of works when you're on the street. It kind of blends it in a little better, I think, than if they had just brought this flat fascia around the corner. Some minor detail. You see this three-part segmentally headed window on the side facade with the fan light. That fan light echoes the fan light at the front door, which you see here. The front door features side lights with leaded glass, a wooden glass fan light, paired Tuscan columns holding up the porch, and then you see the original balustrade here with this kind of starburst pattern, which is really common for the style. The upper portion was added, and it's pretty clear it was added for safety, and I'm recommending a consideration that you think about this, because it kind of takes away, I think, from the proportions and the balance of this really nice portico. See decorative shutters on the main windows at the front. Most of the windows on the house are original, but there are some vinyl replacements, including this one at the side. In the addition is a vinyl replacement. So here's an example of the original windows, 6/6, true divided lights with the OG lugs. This house is a nice example of siding, this really heavy siding that gives it a lot of texture. And I also think the cornices are especially finely detailed on this property. It gives it a nice look. Here we are coming around the sides. So this is the south facade facing into the backyard. Because this is a corner house, again, we have the fence, we have the small backyard. And certain things result from that. Even I found this detail of the vents, even though they're kind of standard utilitarian vents, when they're kind of put in this way, it just struck me as kind of an interesting approach. The garage is original. The door isn't, but if these little grids were removed, it would be a little more appropriate. Well, actually, these, I can't say, but the door itself fits the kinds of doors we would approve for a colonial revival house with this panel detail.
Is it wood?
It's a steel door.
And we're okay with that material?
In general, yeah. We've been putting a lot of wood doors on. Ultimately, I don't think you can tell the difference, and I've left it up to people, but a lot of the houses that have done doors recently have used wood, so. And the commission's taken a particular focus on garage doors over time, so. So this is the side facade. This facade has all of its original wood windows. When we come around to what's really the east side facade, but is sort of the back of the house, that's where several of these windows are also vinyl. And so the recommendation is to replace all of the vinyl windows with new wood windows to match the historic windows. You can see in the aerial view here, there was also a some sort of guest house or rumpus room wing attached to the back of the garage, which is fairly nicely designed. There is a patio cover attached to this side of the garage, which has a different roof form, but I don't think we'd want it to have a steeply pitched roof. So I didn't call this out, but it's definitely an addition that came later. And then here you can see this brownish areas where the flat roof addition was made in the 50s. Here's pictures of the vinyl windows that we're recommending to be replaced. This one, this one, this one. I can't remember. There were some wood windows were replaced in the kitchen with wood windows that seemed acceptable. And then this shows the porch railing. I put this as a consideration because I also acknowledge there's a safety aspect to having an incredibly low railing on a balcony that may be used. My recommendation would be to remove this upper section that was added and then put in a very light, probably a metal railing that would be inboard of the historic railing, and hopefully you would more or less just see a line hovering over the top of the balustrade that could provide a sense of safety. It's not required. The historical building code might allow this, so I would kind of leave that up to the owner or a discussion with the owner in terms of who's using this and what the safety issues might be over time. And then we have another fence that's kind of doing something similar to the fence that we just looked at. I would say it's not as much of an issue because that one was particularly a problem because of its proximity to the open porch. But here we have a fence that comes to the leading corner of the house at the front facade. In general, we ask to see fences pushed back from front corners to kind of allow the full volume to be revealed. And one possible solution to this would be to remove this section, because I think this is an appropriate fence in terms of its design with the brick piers and the painted wood and the, riffing off of the balustrade to some degree. But the idea of taking this portion of the fence out and then returning it so that it runs perpendicular to the street and comes to this back corner of the house would be kind of a compromise solution to open this up again, not have this obscure part of the front facade, but still not reduce their backyard tremendously.
Do we know what's behind it?
Just there's no AC or anything. It's just landscape area.
It's not like an air conditioning unit or something.
Yeah, and it could be better landscaped. If this were open, it could look nice. So we have 3 conditions: replacing the vinyl windows, reconfiguring the fence, and the house also needs a paint job, so painting the full house. And then I put the railing at the portico just for your consideration to see if you think that's an issue.
Thank you. We'll open the public hearing. Brian Hamilton is here to speak.
Thank you, everybody, for reviewing my application. Thank you, Jay, for explaining the process along the way. And I do want to say I really appreciate what you all do to make this beautiful neighborhood as beautiful as it is and preserve the integrity of it. I'm fairly new to Glendale, and I'm very proud when friends come from other areas to visit. So, thank you.
Thank you.
One evening last spring, I was planting flowers in the front yard, and a lady was walking by with her dog. And she stopped and she said to me, every time I walk past your house and look at it, it just makes me happy, and I can't help but smile. And I got to tell you, that echoes how I feel the very first time I saw this house. There's something special about it. It just has good energy. And for those, I think all of you have been in this house at one time or another, it just has happy energy. And I'm very proud to be the owner of it. One of the conditions that Jay had mentioned happened to do with the fence, and I feel this evening fence has become kind of a bad word. Could you put the fence picture, please, back up, Jay? The front.
The front of the whole.
The full front?
Yeah, I didn't have a super
The top
good.
one, if you can.
That's as big as we can get it.
Yeah, that's why I put this one, because it captures, but I can toggle.
If you can turn it, like just the other, go back one more. Here, keep going. Yes, that one, please.
Okay.
Okay, so it's the top picture, it's that little section of fence. And I completely understand the point of the recommendation, but when you really look at the property as a whole, it is exposed on 2 different streets already, and that small part of the fence has this towering 2-story part of the house over it, and is very, very exposed. And being configured on the lot the way it is, that yard is so tiny for a big house like that. And I would just like to do everything possible to preserve the size of that tiny yard. And one of the things you mentioned with the last property was perhaps planting a hedge or doing some beautiful landscaping. I could do that. I could work with a designer and any of your input to create something beautiful that we would all be proud of and walk away feeling good about.
Yeah, I mean, if you're asking us, yeah, we could say remove the fence. You can do any type of landscaping.
Well, I'm sorry, Chris, I'm not being clear. I'd prefer not to remove the fence.
Oh, you want to keep the fence and do a hedge.
Such a tiny private yard for that big house.
No, I understand.
I prefer not to remove the fence.
I understand. Sorry, I was a little unclear. I see. And I think it's less about the fact that it's obscuring the house and more about sort of the plane of it.
I understand that, and that's why I'm thinking perhaps an option would be like the landscaping you had mentioned.
To kind of break up that thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
What you're not seeing, though, and I took some pictures of it, if you look over towards the garage, you have a big bougainvillea. I mean, it's huge. I don't think you've got a picture of it.
Yeah, that
See
right
it
there.
on the trellis, yeah.
That
Is that
big
the one in
plant?
between
It
the
covers up
garage?
a big chunk. Yeah, that right there, yeah.
May I walk?
Sure.
Well, we can't hear you, so
Oh.
you can't
I'm
talk.
coming back, but I'm just going to point A and B, just A and B, okay?
Okay.
So, when I purchased the house a little over 3 years ago, there were matching trees. I think that was a silver pittosporum. And they were big and beautiful, and they hid the fence as well. But last summer, when we had that crazy heat, it just killed it. And I was watering it. I even covered them with sheets to try and save those plants, but the heat killed it. So that was done about, that middle tree was put there about, I would say, less than 4 years ago, because we bought the house a little over 3 years ago. So landscaping could completely cover that fence, and I want to do something beautiful with that front anyway.
Okay. Okay. Anything else?
No, I just think the fence is like the jewelry of the property. It's like a necklace that combines creates the finishing touch on the beautiful outfit that makes a cohesive picture.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone want to start?
I can start. I've been there twice now, and I was there again this morning, so concerning your fence and the rest of the property. So I went and saw it, I guess, last Sunday, Saturday or Sunday, and then I took Commissioner Doom last night to see it, and Mr. Hamilton was there, and he came out, and we walked through the house and the whole bit, and it's just a very, like you said with the lady, that it makes you happy. It's just that kind of house. It's just really great, and I think he's a good steward. I agree with most of the conditions there. I'm not really concerned in reconfiguring the fence. I don't know, because the yard is so small, taking a little bit more of the yard and putting it out in the front, I think it's just a little bit onerous on this house itself. But I'll go with whatever the commission says. It does need to be painted. And as far as removing the upper railing, it's about a foot, I guess, high, pretty much. And when you're out on it, you would just, without that little addition there, you would fall right over onto the street. So I realize why they put it there, and I don't think the solution is a good solution. I think the way it is now, I don't think it takes away any part of the house. So, so other than those two things, I'm happy that we'll be on the Glendale Register, hopefully, if we vote that way. So.
Yes. So I have.
Your chair.
Oh, I can't go. I can't.
I mean,
I can't just
you
go
can
out of
ask-
order if I
you
want
can
to.
ask
No.
I am the chair.
This is not a peaceful transition of power.
You can ask me if you may go first.
No, I cede.
Thank you very much for bringing this before us today, and it was a pleasure to tour your beautiful home. I would agree with staff on the conditions to replacing the windows and painting the house. On the upper railing, I also agree with staff that the proportions, if you look at it from, well, either that view or straight on, the proportions take away from that beautiful entry. And so I would suggest that we take off that top additional part of railing. And I think if you stood back 1 foot from the railing, if you're out there, you wouldn't fall right over. Commissioner
This is
Morgan.
true.
Regarding the fence, I also would agree with staff. If you want to go back to the front view where you can see the whole facade, it's such a beautiful facade, and I think what is beautiful about this colonial style is the asymmetrical balance. And so I think with removing that portion of the fence down below, you're really getting that 2-story volume with a 1-story and a nice clean front facade that really celebrates that style. And so I think the fence is taking away a little bit from that. I think that 2-story volume needs that symmetrical balance to counterbalance the 1-story living room area. So I would agree with staff that the fence should be returned back at a perpendicular to the house to free that up and open that corner up from the front.
In terms of the portico, if safety was a concern, which we can't completely ignore, would you be okay with a secondary railing of a simple light design or not?
I wouldn't like it.
Okay.
I could live with it if it's truly like a code issue and we have to.
Yeah, I don't.
Obviously, but
I don't. Yeah, sorry, not my turn.
Well, you can discuss.
Not my
You're allowed to.
turn.
You're
It's
just,
coming. It's coming.
the historical building code automatically applies to historic resources, so we can't say it doesn't apply. But within the code, there's some latitude, and they may look at it and say this is.
Be grandfathered in or.
Well, it could be, yeah,
Yeah.
but building and safety has the final say on that,
Yeah.
so they may, if they thought this was a safety issue, they could.
Yeah, like I say, I'll go along with code if it's code driven. If it's aesthetic driven, I would like it removed.
Yeah, and another option would be instead of an inboard railing to remove it and then put a railing that actually kind of comes right above in plane, more or less, with that. And I still picture that being kind of a light metal handrail with as minimal vertical posts as needed to support it. But we
Thank
will see where this takes us.
Okay. That was the last of my comments.
Thank you. Okay, so I have actually been in the house several times, so I'm sorry I wasn't able to go this weekend, but I did tour it. It's been for sale a couple of times over the years, and so I have gotten to see it, and I do know what you're talking about with the yard. I think it had a much bigger yard before they went and slapped on that addition, which is good from the inside to have the extra space, but it also eats up a lot of the yard when those types of things happen. So I understand the want for the space. I mean, you can see right there. It doesn't look like it's a lot, but I know that it feels like a lot, and especially if the fence were returned back to the house at that last column, it really would feel like it cuts out the yard. But, I mean, could it be possible, Jay, that it would seem weird, but maybe a hybrid of what we're discussing. Remove the fence, you can install a thick, dense hedge, and just don't return the fence. And then you still have use of the space, it's still blocked. What's bothersome to me about the fence is kind of the starkness of it, the bright white starkness of it. It's not so much, like I mentioned before, the fact that it's hiding part of the house. It just doesn't feel like a natural extension from that corner. So if that fence was gone and you had some dense boxwood or something that kept people, kept the space safe, but also gave you the opportunity to use the space behind, and the hedge could grow tall. I mean, there's no limit on how tall you could grow that hedge. I feel like it would just make that corner a little softer. That's the part that I'm having a hard time with, is kind of the stark brightness of that fence. The detail at the top is nice, but I feel like the rest of it's just kind of, and I understand the idea of putting the hedge in front of it to soften that. The problem is we don't really condition landscaping, really. So I feel like in this case, it's sort of like we would want the fence gone. If you want to put a hedge in, you can, but we aren't really going to be a part of that particular, right? We don't really condition landscaping.
Right,
We
yeah.
wouldn't say remove the hedge and put in or remove the
Well,
fence.
the
and put in a hedge.
DRB does sometimes condition landscaping to provide a buffer, to provide a sense of privacy in some cases.
I see.
So it's possible. We don't regulate it. Once you say that it needs to happen, there's a 5-year window where it has to stay alive or replanted, and then once that passes, anything goes.
Oh,
That's the design review rule, which probably I think it would apply here. We don't address it in the district guidelines.
Okay. Can you go back to the picture of the back corner, back door? There. Where the meter is, that window above it, is that one of the wood replacements?
No, that's an old window.
Oh, so it's divided light at the top but not at the bottom. Is that the service porch?
Yeah, actually, that's a good point. That's strange, and maybe something happened. In general, when you see these little pieces that hang down are called OG lugs,
Yeah.
and that's usually a sign of an older window. It's not necessarily the original. There's a chance that this got replaced at some point, and they took out the muttons.
It's probably the only one, right?
I didn't
so.
notice it anywhere else.
Yeah, I didn't notice
I didn't
others.
notice it here either, but
So I mean, I feel like that should we should, if we're going to the trouble of replacing and fixing the windows, maybe we should bring that one into line with the rest of them.
So install a new lower sash?
Yeah.
Okay.
Otherwise, I'm good with the rest of the conditions. I agree with them.
And then, but could you clarify your fence?
No.
What about their balcony?
Okay.
Oh, the balcony. I am hesitant to be a party to setting something up that's an unsafe situation.
Yes.
So I feel like, however, I don't really like the way that it looks. So I would, if the condition is to remove that top portion, which I agree with, I do think that there should be something else there. I would not want to be, I don't want to be in the way of something else being put in there to protect the space, if that makes sense. So to Ms. Shire's point, I wouldn't want to say, I don't want something there. I would rather say, if the homeowner feels like he wants to put something there, he should be able to put something there as a barrier, rather than not put something there at all.
Okay, and I think, I don't remember how I wrote the condition. So basically this consideration would turn into a condition: remove the upper railing, allowing for the possibility of installing a light metal safety railing placed inboard or above. I could rework this.
Yes. Not precluding him from having something there.
Okay, so we're going to get rid of the upper railing if that becomes the vote, and then we'll talk about safety issues and come up with a design that we can improve at staff level.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, if the owner chooses.
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, I'll make a motion.
Okay.
Are we ready?
You can.
Okay. Let me
But
find it, Mike.
before you make the motion, though, if I don't agree with some of the conditions, do I do it now? Do I do it later? Are you going to vote on each of the conditions?
Well, it's easier to do it now so that we don't have to have motions die and then have to have new motions. So let's duke it
Yeah,
out.
keep the
Well,
discussion going.
the two I don't agree with is reconfigure the fence between the house and the garage, and I don't think removing the upper railing on top of the historic railing at the portico should be done. But those are my own. I agree with every one of the other staff conditions, so.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion. I move that we recommend to City Council that the property at 116 Don Jose Drive be called the Wright House and be designated as a historic resource in the Glendale Register of Historic Properties, and that we grant the homeowner a Mills Act contract. And this would include all the conditions as staff had read and that are in the report, including replacing of vinyl windows, changing the fence, painting the exterior, and removing the upper railing, adding, if desired, a safety railing.
And including the other window,
Oh, yes,
along with the other one. Okay.
plus one additional window. Yeah, as noted by Chair Craignotti.
Is the chair allowed to second things?
No.
Yeah,
You can pass the gavel if
Oh,
we
you
if
can
we
pass
can't
it to
get a
Mike
s-
if
if
you
we
want
can't
me to
get a
second.
second, you could pass the gavel to Mike and then.
yeah,
Okay. I'm going to pass you the gavel.
thank you.
There's a real gavel up there, isn't there?
No.
It used,
No.
no, it used to be, we lost it.
Come on.
This is this
Unbelievable.
The pen's
All
not good enough.
all that power.
I gave him a pen.
There you go.
All right.
Oh, I only get it for like a second. Passed.
No, you have to second it. I'm not-
I'm passing the gavel so that I can second.
Oh, yeah, correct.
Yes, so I second the motion.
All right. Vote, Chair Commissioner Morgan,
No.
Commissioner Craignotti. I'm sorry, Commissioner Shire,
Yes.
Chair Pro Tem Craignotti.
Yes.
Motion passes 2-1. So we move forward to
Great.
council.
Great.
you.
Congratulations.
Yes. Okay, so now we're just waiting for
Do you need to call her back?
maybe.
I'll run back and I don't know if she
Chair
actually got.
Chair Vartanian, if you can hear us, please come back.
Take a 2-minute thing. I gotta go.
Oh, yeah, we'll take a 2-minute recess.
I get it.
Okay, for those of you out in TV land, we're returning from a quick break and moving out to 7D, 1818, Hassa Glen Drive, Glendale Register nomination and Mills Act application.
All right, we have something completely different.
Yeah.
We have this house at 1818 Passaglen Drive, which is on the east side of, the Verdugo Canyon area. And this looks a little different. I'm using the sheets that came with the application, just out of expedience when I was putting this together. So, but the information's all here. This is a house from the 1940s, which is a decade that we don't look at all that often here. And that's in large part because there was so little construction during World War II period. This house was hand-built by the family that built it, lived in it, and stayed there until the current owners recently purchased it. So it was in the same family for 70 years or so. And it was built by Bill Wittick, who was a builder and designer. And he and his wife and their friends and various people kind of made this house happen. And it's quirky. It's a kind of an eccentric house. It doesn't fall into any pure style exactly, but since we always are talking about style and kind of pigeonholing things, which this is a good example of why we shouldn't spend so much time doing that, but it does have aspects of kind of English-French revival, kind of cottagey style, and you see that in the roof forms with some of the steeply pitched roofs, the hipped and gabled roof configurations. There are 3 prominent dormers on the front, 2 of which are wall dormers, actually, only one's a real wall dormer. The one at the front is kind of a strange one. It's a wall dormer with an overhanging gable. And then there's behind the tree here, there's a shed dormer that I think we'll see in a better picture. You can see the picture from 1944. The house was built between 1941 and 1947. And here's Mr. William W. Wittick's shingle, advertising his position as a builder in Glendale. So we see the house from the front with the garage facing the street. The stucco you see at the garage level is the only stucco on the house. The rest is very handcrafted kind of wood. And what's really interesting here is it's a variety of wood siding types. So we have horizontal, very rusticated shingles at the front garage bedroom wing. Over toward the front of the house at the front door area, we have shingles. And then as we move on to the rest of the house, we have board and batten siding. So thinking about it and talking with the Bonstons, and they have a tremendous amount of documentation about this house, photographs of the entire construction process that I included some of in your package and some we'll show here tonight. They also have construction diaries, day by day, week by week diaries of what was done, what was completed, what shipment came in. So they were clearly very proud of what they were doing and very pleased to have done this project for themselves. At the front door, interesting features are this double door, which looks like a Dutch door that opens in 2 parts, but it's actually a single door. This window just caught my eye as something that's kind of unusual to see here. It's like a display case more than something else, and it also gives it a twinge of modern look, which I saw little indications of that around the house, though no one would call this, obviously, a modern design. The garage doors are original and have this chevron design. The split rail fence at the front kind of keeps the woodsy theme of the entire project going. Here we have the side elevation with the front of the house being to the left here, the rear of the house back along the hillside. So the house is set into the hill, and ultimately when you're inside the house, it's a multi-level house, but it doesn't appear like a traditional split level from the street. So you see these interesting roof forms kind of cascading down the hill following the contours of the land. This door also caught my eye. This is to the bedroom wing that was kind of added a little later. It wasn't part of the original design, but this was a project that was morphing as they were figuring out what they wanted to do as they were building and putting it all together. And so this has the purple prism glass, which is usually associated with commercial storefronts from the 1910s into the 20s maybe. So it's kind of a cool reuse of that material in a way that you normally wouldn't see it. Here's some photos of the back facade. You can see how it's set into the hillside here. The house is very original, including windows at the back of the house that suddenly don't feel quite so woodsy. We have an aluminum sliding glass door and some other aluminum windows. Because this house was, so intrinsically part of Bill Wittick and his family's life, he was making these changes while they lived there. So when he's installing those things in preservation where we determine what's the period of significance for a property, most properties, the period of significance only extends to the time that it was built. So the date range of its construction, perhaps going back to its design. If a significant person lived in the house, that period of significance can expand to the duration of that person's association with the house. In this case, Bill Wittick, we can't say is significant. There's an interesting story here, but nothing that kind of influenced the history of our area or beyond. But because these changes were made by this designer builder, I think that they're appropriate changes, where in other houses we'd probably say, oh, take out those windows and put in a wood window. But here I find them to be appropriate and would recommend that they not be changed. Here's another view kind of down the side of the house toward the street. So this is kind of the side yard area. This is one of the venerable oak trees that they designed around the oaks on the site. There's this cool kind of barbecue area here with this cabinet that's hidden by this door, and I'll show you to open in a second. So you can see the house is really enmeshed in the setting, with the landscape being an integral part of, I think, the overall conception. Here's just a selection of the cool historic photos of the construction process with Bill and Lynn Wittick here. And here they are up on the house, putting the purlins in the rafters and doing everything that you need to do. And I couldn't resist putting this photo in because it's just so cool. And it looks like, where are we? Are we in Big Bear? Or we're in Glendale? I don't know. So, and then as you start looking at the house and kind of homing in on the details, there's a lot of really interesting stuff going on. What are these? Rain gutters are wood rain gutters in a V form that then have a metal liner. And this is the one at the back of the house, and then it has this kind of embossed end cap. The ones at the front of the house are even cooler, I think, in terms of just being super rustic in the way they fit into the extended rafters that come out just to hold the rain gutter. But I didn't get a good picture of those, so sorry. Here's that cabinet near the barbecue that also has this fold-out table. And Mr. Wittick was also kind of an iron worker, and so he hand-wrought some of these pieces on site with a little forge that they had there. This is kind of a weight to act as a gate closer. Just even a little latch on a cabinet is definitely handy. You feel the hand of the craftsperson. Little detail like this bell, whatever it is. And that's what I have on this house. I didn't have any recommended conditions, partly because this is an ongoing maintenance issue for forever. It's got a lot of which the owners must be happy about. But the wood, it's not like we can say paint this. We don't want this house to be painted. It just has to be maintained and cared for over the years. So unless the commissioners themselves found things that you want to include as conditions, I didn't have any to propose.
Thank you. Any questions for Jay at this point?
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm. Jay, criterion 3 is a bunch of ands or ors. A property must embody the distinctive and exemplary characteristics of an architectural style, architectural type, period, or method of construction. Which one would you categorize this house under?
Probably method of construction.
Okay.
I think we can, it's, this is where style gets, I don't want to be hamstrung by the fact that this isn't a pure representative of a single style, but it does have a style, and it does reflect traditional styles. So I would kind of, between style and workmanship, kind of keep it in there.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Okay, I have one.
And one note that I put in the staff report, somehow the Bonstons got hold of an old application, which we didn't talk about. But before we go to council, I would want this to be reformatted into our current form, because these are the old criteria when we had 7 criteria. But the information's easily transferred, so we can make that happen.
Okay, so we'll open the public hearing and invite Shauna Bonston.
Yay.
Good evening. This is Shauna Bonston. I'm the current homeowner. And when you said got a hold of an old application, I thought you meant the original permit for the house.
Which, of course, you have.
I do have, along with all the materials that the Widdicks kept for decades and decades. And so here we are in 1941 with just typed permit, allowing them for a variance for the 5-foot setback because their Federal Housing Administration loan wouldn't permit them to build further up the hill, which they wanted to do. But yes, so thank you so much for those of you that were able to visit. For you, you're welcome anytime.
I did drive by and spend a lot of time in front of the house
Thank
earlier,
you.
so sorry I couldn't come.
No, it's actually been such a delight to be able to kind of geek out with others on the thrilling aspects of our house, and we are honored to be stewards. We weren't looking for a house when we first discovered it about 3 years ago. It just kind of found us. We rallied, we made it happen. There were 12 other offers. We are so lucky. We continue to pinch ourselves. We can't believe we landed it. So I just wanted to appreciate you for your time and say that this is kind of our forever house. We do look forward to decades and decades of work that needs to be done. As you saw, there's virtually no changes that have taken place other than really as it was going through the construction process. And so for us, it's really about kind of making up for some deferred maintenance. And as you see our list of items to do repairs, of course, the roof is among the top ones. And just in kind of noting the uniqueness of the construction during the war period, of course, there's a ton of photos that you couldn't also include that really kind of depict what wartime construction was like and the delay and then the victory gardens. And as I was able to show some of you and my husband as well, the interior of the house really represents kind of creativity with materials. The stairway, for example, reuses the crates that were Mr. Whittick's office location. The shipment materials he then brought home on a daily basis and kind of constructed that. I just wanted to point out, we had a conversation about how rare it was to construct during wartime. And one of the items that we have, among so many, are these pictures from 1941. So the permit was issued in July 18th of 1941. By July 26th, they've received the permit, and in the local paper, it shows about 10 permits approved that week in the city of Glendale. So pretty low construction. Then these are some photos from the Passa Glen being flooded out earlier that same year. And then it was mentioned, we just have a ton of materials, including all the documents, and every day something new. Being able to read this and know that the ferns that are in our front yard were replanted from another house in 1942. So with that, I might force my husband to come up and publicly speak as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And he did submit a speaker card, so welcome to come up.
I was told I had to. Mostly just to say thank you for your consideration. We really, I think Stewart has come up quite a bit this evening, and I like that really resonated with us. I think when we saw the house, as my wife said, it was just one of those moments when a crazy open house flooded with people who were talking about, well, how do you get around building around these oaks? And we're like, building? Why would anyone do anything to this place? It needs to be preserved. So thank you for allowing us to potentially have the opportunity to do so. So
good.
Thank you. Okay, that was my last speaker. We can close the hearing and go to deliberations.
Yay.
I think I know who wants to start.
I do. I love this house. I'm sorry. I've dragged everybody up here on the outside. I want to thank you both for putting this house, for nominating this house to be on the Glendale Register. I mean, it's such a period of time. I mean, it's World War II. You have to use with what you got. You can't go down to Home Depot to, you just figure out what you've got. If we've got the materials from the place where I work or anything else. And I do want to read a little bit what they wrote in the the staff wrote, and it says 1818 Paso Glen is an outstanding and in many ways unique example of an English-French revival influenced residence in Glendale. Its significance, however, derives more from the handcrafted, and I do mean handcrafted, organic process of both its design and construction, as well as its creation during and despite the hardships of World War II. Now, we've seen many, many, many houses in Glendale, at least I have, and this is like the movie Mr. Blandings builds his dream house. This is like the Whittocks. This is what they wanted. He drove, if you look at our nomination, he's got a picture, he's got a drawing of what he wants it to look like. And he went and he did it. I mean, he did it. It's just so cool. But the really cool thing about this house, and I love the outside, it's wonderful, and they've done, but to go inside this house and see the creativity that he did is just, it's mind-blowing. I mean, if I could just say a little bit about your daughter's room, just a teeny bit. So you go into the daughter's room, and it's got this cathedral ceiling, and then off to the side it's got a ladder, and that goes up to a loft, and then, so, your kids in a loft in your own bedroom, it's just too much. And then I guess the loft, you can go outside to the garage from up there?
Well, you can access through the attic and then kind of circle back to our son's room with the secret entry.
And that's the thing, they have so many, it's just like Zorro, it's just like they have secret entries and the whole thing. I mean, it's too bad the rest of the world will not see what I got to see, but I've tried to drag everybody I could up there on the
Did you
commission.
see the super cool deep record cabinets?
Oh, yes.
Which, but both the Gravettes and the Bonstons are vinyl people, so give them a little, preservation credit for that. So.
But I just want to say, yeah, I mean, I've seen many houses, like I've said, but this is just, when you use the word and they say don't use it, it's unique. It totally is unique, and it's up Canyon, and it's almost in Montrose, and we'll take it, for instead of one in Glendale, we'll take it up in the Crescenta Valley. But where? It's a really good house. So, I could go on, but I'll defer to the rest of the people that are here. So, anyway, if you haven't seen it, book a tour with them and go inside. It's just,
Careful now.
Yeah.
It's too cool.
Okay, who would like to
Maybe
go
Mr. Doom would
next?
like to speak since he's here now.
Welcome.
Thank you. I'd echo Commissioner Morgan. It is a beautiful old house, very unique. I will use that word for the first time today, and I'm glad to see it on the register. Thank you for submitting the application.
So I'll go. I'm sorry I was not able to visit the house, but I did go by today and spend some time. I didn't think I was going to be able to see as much as I could from the street, so I went and sat in front. And after spending a few minutes sitting there, I had to look, and I had never seen wooden rain gutters before, and I thought, okay, this is something very unique. Again, unique and very special. So it looks like quite the mountain cabin, and I think our flannel-clad bearded gentleman looks like the perfect fit for this house. I think it was a match made in heaven, so thank you for bringing it forward. And without any conditions to discuss, there's not much more to say than that, so thank you.
Thank you for hosting me at the house as well and bringing this before us. It's definitely unique. I think of the words used tonight, like unique or eccentric or eclectic, quirky. I mean, this house is all that, and I think you're probably one in a million that would actually buy it and love it and leave the items in the cupboards and closets and drawers and not want to just clear everything out of there. It's amazing how everything's handcrafted for his tools, and the tools are still there. And I mean, just throughout the house, there's so many interesting elements. I appreciate what Jay said, and we were talking about the criterion 3 and really method of construction being one of those, because the style is hard to define what should be there, what shouldn't be there, what conditions do we put on this, because it's really like one of a kind, so we don't really have any basis for it, which is, I guess, a good reason to put it on the register if it's one of a kind for Glendale. The only conditions maybe that I saw that we could consider, or I guess two, one would be painting the wood that is painted now. For instance, the barbecue cabinet drawer, it's peeling. I can see it in your photos very clearly, peeling off. And maybe there's another painted door somewhere. Or I would say those elements probably should be just to protect it. And then I have a question for staff. You know, the homeowner mentioned that they are wanting to replace the wood. It's a shake roof in a fire zone area. Is there any concerns that we should put that as a condition to protect this house if it's something that's needed or desired, or do we just let
I
it?
think you let the market do what the
Okay.
market does, and
Okay.
we'll do our best to find a roof, and I'm sure the Bonstons will, to find one that's a good. We're never going to get the look back.
No.
So,
But we may not have the
but
house
as soon,
there.
yeah, just looking at the neighborhood, looking at the house, looking at the trees, it's like, and I think that's a priority for them on the list
Okay.
that they gave you. So it'll probably happen sooner than later.
Okay.
But it would be, it would be an unfortunate condition for a Preservation Commission to make, so.
I think it was mentioned that you found something that was very, I'll reopen the hearing, come on up, that was very similar.
That has been something that we were really debating with, and in fact, we got kind of cited by the fire department. There's been some concerns, about the wood. So we've looked into an option that looks really identical to wood, and I don't remember if it's a clay.
So like a recycled plastic product, but it looks like aged wood shape.
So we're happy to show that to you. It's a expensive option that we're definitely willing to do that because we'd be sad to lose the look that we have now. Of course, the moss can't grow back when we do take that off. But
Spray it on.
maybe, yeah, you could help us find some spray on.
Faux moss spray, yeah, it's easy, so.
Probably from a model train layout company.
Yeah, but it's nice that you'll be happy to bring that to us, but you'll also have to do that.
Yes.
Yeah, of course. So.
Is that it? Okay, thank you. Well, thank you as well for hosting me on a weeknight. Commissioner Morgan was really insisting that I needed to get over there, and I reached out to you, and you said, sure, come on over tonight. So that worked out really well. Thank you. I was also somewhat struggling with, criterion 3 and how we were going to sort of look at this house. So not to be redundant, but when I read through the criterion, and we do say that the proposed resource embodies distinctive and exemplary characteristics of an architectural style, so I think we can say it's eclectic. Architectural type, or period, which was wartime, and method of construction, which was hand-built. So I think I could feel comfortable with that. And again, truly being one of a kind, we think, unless another one comes forward in Glendale, unique, but also I think what makes up a lot of what gives us so much interest is just the history, just the amount of documentation you have and the full history and all of the photographs and just understanding how much. To me, it looks like she was up on the roof in heels. I can't tell, but good for them for really. And Commissioner Morgan really, talked about how difficult it is or was to get materials at that time, and the creativeness and ingenuity and resourcefulness that was used in putting this home together. So. I do think you are uniquely suited for the stewardship of this house. That painting you even showed me in the hallway that looked like it came with the house, and I asked you, and you said, no, that's ours. We brought it here. So, I will be happy to support the nomination. So if we have a motion and a second.
I can make a motion. So I move that we recommend to City Council that the property at 1818 Paso Glen Drive be called the Wittick House and be designated as a historic resource in the Glendale Register of Historic Resources, and that we also recommend to City Council that they authorize a Mills Act contract with the condition of painting the wood that is currently painting and also bringing before staff whatever you do to the roof material.
Second.
Can I just say, now the roof will just come to us naturally, not as a condition? Okay. Second from Commissioner Morgan. All right, Commissioner Crognati?
Yes.
Commissioner Doom?
Yes.
Commissioner Morgan?
Most enthusiastically, yes.
That might be your most enthusiastic.
It is my most enthusiastic.
Which is
big.
No, something, yeah.
Yeah, I know. Considering I've been enthusiastic for most things, but this is even more.
You're discerning, definitely. So, Commissioner Shire?
Yes.
Chair Vartanian?
Happily, yes.
Okay, we now have a 5-0 vote, since everyone's here, to approve with one condition.
Okay, congratulations. Thank you, everyone. Okay, with that, we will move on to item number 8, Planning Division updates and informational briefings. 8A is briefing regarding replacement of concrete steps and repair of terracotta entry surround at City Hall.
All right, so we have this picture up, but I think you all know City Hall well. Last year, the Facilities Division was working on a proposal to replace the concrete steps at City Hall. So this building's on the Glendale Register, obviously, so we got involved. And the steps are in truly bad condition, and not repairing them means that they're going to continue to deteriorate. There are lots of cracks that have been repaired multiple times over the years, and those cracks, the crack filling replacements, fall out, and so now we have open cracks again. So it's pretty standard concrete. It's just plain gray concrete. And when they proposed it last time, we put together a specification that we reviewed and approved, and they didn't get enough bidders on the project, so nothing happened. So now it's coming back, and the work is combined with some repair work to these terracotta units at the door surround, and those are also in bad shape, and they truly detract, I think, from the appearance of City Hall. People have said, why don't we just replace them? And I have said, I don't think you can do that, or you should do that, or we'll have to bring it here. And that. So the plan now is to restore the terracotta, repair and restore as needed. I've reviewed the specification put together by Spectra Company, which is one of the major firms that does this kind of restoration work. And they're using all the right materials, and they've done this kind of thing a lot more than I have, although I have been involved with terracotta work over the years. And so we just wanted to give you this informational update because it's going to be going to City Council, and it seemed for such a prominent building in the city to catch you, blindside you with this coming forward, we didn't think that was a good idea. So
thank you.
So, but it looks like it's going to be in good hands, and
Thank you.
That's what I've got.
Thank you, Jay. And item 8B is update on construction progress for new garage at 1753 Hillcrest.
Okay, so we have
Becoming our old
some
friend.
new updated photos that aren't, it was pretty close to this status last month when we looked at it, but these are the updated photos. I think that's, oh, here's another one to see the entire roof in place. The issue now is, you know, they haven't put the door in, but we approved the design of the door, so that will be coming next. Once the door is in and the light fixtures go up, I think they're pretty much done with the garage. The big part of this is to get rid of the metal canopy that's on the house. Speaking to the Durans today, there's a small issue in terms of the retaining walls, and I don't know if you remember the site that well, but there are retaining walls on the side of the driveway that the metal canopy comes down and is attached to. I can't remember exactly how it works. Their engineer, or the city building and safety people, said there was concern about removing those retaining walls because the plan is to also widen the driveway to allow better access to get back to the garage. So they're having a soils consultant come in to do some more testing there. I mentioned that they can take the metal canopy off and do all of that work, and I suggested that they try to make sure that that's done before our special meeting on December 5th. I can't say for sure that will happen, but the project is moving forward regularly, so I'm comfortable that within the next couple of months at least, everything will be done. And that reminds me to remind you that December 5th is a special meeting, so the regularly scheduled meeting of, Lorna, can you see what the third Thursday of November is?
21?
Over there? No.
Yeah, November 21, and the meeting, I don't know where my phone went.
No.
Meeting of,
November?
That's October.
yeah, the regularly scheduled meetings of November and
Oh, yeah,
December
I
are
can see
canceled, and then we're having a single meeting on December 5th,
Yeah.
so.
So the 21st of November and the 19th of December are canceled.
Even with glasses, my eyes aren't that good.
Yeah. I can't read this in front of me, but I can read that.
God. Okay, that's everything I've got.
Jay, is that just a shadow on the header? I can't think of the proper term for that right now.
Oh, the fascia thing? The
They
theme
did
thing?
some, they
Yeah,
did
that's
a little
shadow.
carving.
But the dark part is shadow. yeah.
This part up here? Yeah, it's the shadow of the eave and the
No,
rafters.
on that part right there, that kind of shiny.
The goldish looking on the dark
This?
brown.
Yeah, that's just
Yeah,
the
that's-
sun.
I think that's the sun, yeah.
Oh, I
It's the
see
sun
what it is.
reflection.
I got it now. Okay.
Hotspot.
Well, they're gold leafing the sun.
No, I
You're
thought.
okay with that, right?
Sure. It's kind of fancy.
Let's do it.
Okay,
Taking
so,
much time, they're not doing gold leaf.
all right, so I think our meeting is adjourned.
We're done.
Great.
At 7:50, 7:40.
7:40.